Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 190. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined by only one of my sons, Dustin Furman, executive producer of Last Stand Media. Dustin, how are you today?
I've been having a bit of a weird morning. Last two mornings, I wake up, plenty of sleep, but like just this little bit of grogginess, kind of like a almost like a droop feeling, like my eyes are slightly swollen or something. I don't know, not swollen, but my sinuses, I think.
Yeah, okay.
And so I'm wondering, especially this morning, I was not feeling so good, but just, sometimes if you're not feeling good, you just gotta, get a shower, eat some lunch or whatever, try to like freshen up. And I think that rejuvenated me for now. I may be dying later, but at least we'll have Horizon this weekend. So I'll try to take it easy over the weekend.
Please do.
How are you though?
I'm fine. I'm doing well. People, first of all, conspicuously know that Chris isn't here this week, which is incredibly unusual. Chris is having tech issues. Actually, we were ready to record. He joined our call at 1 o'clock. It's 1:27 now. We just started recording. We spent about 25 minutes trying to troubleshoot it. He's still in California at Sweeney's. He's going back to New York in a couple of days. So the setup will just be back to his old setup. So we don't really have to worry about it. But we felt like we were belaboring the point a little bit by trying to troubleshoot it over and over again. So we were like, you know what? Go be yourself and be free. And we'll do the show without you this week.
Sometimes tech issues when you do a podcast, when you do any content, that this has been my life for really since I got into doing production. Is tech issues are half of your time spent basically, and this was a very troubling one. But Chris, he's well. He was in good spirits as well. We couldn't hear him laughing, but we could see him laughing about like just everything we tried. Nothing worked.
Yeah,
but he will be back with us next week.
Yeah, it's no big deal. It does happen. I'm afraid to even put this in the words. I'll knock on wood, but we run into tech issues actually exceedingly rarely, considering how many times we record.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, it was way worse at IGN. And even kind of funny than I think it is with us. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. IGN was fucked. Just because it's so big and there's so many things that can break and so many things can go wrong. And we had this one person who was only in charge of just the production, like items, like the curation of the items and where everything was. And like the cameras and the lights and like checking things in and out and buying new things and stuff like that. That was just one person's job. It was just dealing with that, not anything else. And I was always really enamored with that. That's a real production company. This is not a real production company.
No.
As you can see.
But some of our production is comparable to some of these big places. I'm just saying, on certain levels.
Yes. The visual quality, no, probably not. The visual quality is still kind of new for us because we did this for years without doing any video at all. But the content itself, superior. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and fucking twiddle my thumbs and pretend that it's not.
I'll just say that we don't use Discord calls, and that puts us at an advantage big time.
People are weird. It's not that difficult. But as we've said before, we were kind of built for this era without intentionally being built for this era. And also we're talking a lot of shit for people that just had technical issues. Welcome to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast, the most popular in the world. I was going to say the most famous. That's probably not true. But certainly the most listened to, and we appreciate that very much. Thank you very much. You can find us on free feeds, of course, on your podcast service of choice. You can find us on YouTube, but of course, get every episode 3 days early and ad-free by supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, where nearly 13,000 of you are supporting us right now. Thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you. Goes without saying, but we couldn't do it without you. If you want to be a freeloader and a scallywag, that's fine. I do have a special request this week that I haven't made. And by the way, nice mute as you coughed. I don't think I didn't notice that you did that. Because I did notice that.
I do that regularly.
No, I know, but I really I appreciate the agility that you show there.
Thank you. I try. It's very, I don't want people listening to my nasty coughs ever.
Right. You're COVID. You have long COVID.
That's right. Yeah.
What was I saying? Was I saying something?
You wanted to point something out.
It can't be that important, I guess. I was saying something specific. It doesn't matter. Who cares? What I wanted to say was this real quick. I mean, I wanted to say something else, but what I also want to say is this. I feel like this episode, this is a reason I'm disappointed Chris isn't here, is because This episode feels like it has a little bit of levity.
Oh,
it feels like it's a good week for PlayStation. Now, we're not corporate cheerleaders on this podcast, of course, but it's fun to celebrate the brand we love. We all love PlayStation. I mean, I love PlayStation. I love the brand. I think it's great, but we're not rooting for them from a corporate standpoint. But I feel like we as a people have been so put down upon the last few months, beaten up, right? Cast aside, told PlayStation fans, stand down. And I feel like this is a good week for us here on this show. So that's one thing I wanted to note as far as Chris not being here, because I feel like he's missing out. Because usually we're going to have the ample amount of depression. We're going to have the ample amount of skepticism and pessimism. There's no doubt about that.
True.
But I feel like the recipe's a little off this week, and it would have been nice to have him here.
So yeah, I think that, Colin, you're on the right track where we're cheering for a much anticipated game. We're very excited, particularly, man, with Horizon, just the level of craftsmanship behind this title. We're really excited to play it. That's totally worth celebrating. Now, you said about corporate cheerleading. We're not cheering for the exclusivity that the PlayStation fans will be able to exclusively play Horizon. That's a little bit of a different, weird level of cheerleading. I'm just excited about a great game that's before us.
Me too. We'll get there. We'll talk about that soon. In the meantime, I want to remind everyone again, support us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia, all of that, early ad-free access. The ability to submit questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. We have many of those this week, as we always do. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sacred Symbols Plus, of course. New episode with someone from the Rand Corporation, the think tank, all about China. People are loving this episode. I don't know if you saw the comments on it, but
yes,
people are loving this episode. And it is a deeply political and deeply economic podcast that has very little to do with games and a lot to do with how China economically formed itself into a powerhouse and how that is affecting entertainment. And it's, I'm going to let Sale, the guy that came on, Sale Lilly, an analyst, Oxford educated, fluent in Mandarin. You're definitely going to want to hear from this guy. But he told me something that I thought was so interesting and some people were talking about this in our Discord, which is another perk over on Patreon, that in Chinese fiction, modern Chinese fiction, you're not allowed to use time travel as a component unless it's like a very limited form of it, because anything that could potentially undo the CCP takeover of China is something that they don't ever play around with in their fiction. And he was explaining that there's really fucked up things going on that no one talks about. That there are basically intermediaries between the Chinese entertainment industry and the various companies, which you can imagine, like Disney and others. And when they're even conceptualizing a movie, they go to these people and they're like, we want to play around with time travel or something, some other prohibited thing. This is specifically how we want to do it. Is this allowed within the parameters of what you do? Because we won't even bother if it's going to get shut down when we're actually producing it, if we have to edit it or do something else. And he's like, this is very common. And that's a really good illustration of why it matters. And thus, you should listen to that podcast. It's very, 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 very good. I really enjoyed doing it. Also, Sacred Symbols Plus about games journalism. That's up now. Micah, our coordinator, did a mailbag that's really funny. I really enjoyed that. You're doing one with Maddie soon, right? About FromSoft. Yes. Explain to me what this is going to be.
Yeah, this is already in the can. So
I'm excited. Did it already? Oh, wow.
We did it already, and it's the plan. I'm pretty sure it's for Saturday. We want to make sure we get it in before Elden Ring, of course. And this is a From Software retrospective episode where we took your questions and comments over at patreon.com/laststandmedia. Guys, I was so impressed because I put this out on, I think, Monday night. And by the next morning, we had over 80 write-ins. So clearly this audience is fired up about From Software games, which is awesome. And Maddie and I just took your questions, talked about this company and this series that we love so dearly. And yeah, I hope you guys will like it because I had such a fun time recording it. And Maddie and I both, something special when you get these two weebs together. Mm-hmm. So check it out Saturday.
Weebery.
Yes, a lot of weebery.
Very good. Very good. And upcoming episodes too about QA at Sony. We have one about psychiatry and psychology. Well, actually not psychiatry, psychology in games, which is really going to be fun. We had to reschedule that one, unfortunately. One is publishing. I haven't teased it at all. A big one is coming. What I consider a very big episode is publishing the day after this episode goes live on free feeds. Big episode of Sacred Symbols Plus is dropping. That's all I'll say. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to listen to it. Live show, Sacred Symbols 200. live in Richmond at the National, Saturday, April 30th. Snark Tank opening. It's ranking the 25 best PlayStation 4 games. It's going to be really awesome. I'm really excited about that. So the issue here is that we are now waiting for the tickets to go on sale for everyone. We sold more than 300 tickets in our pre-sale period, which is really awesome. We're really excited about that. However, we know that there is a huge audience that wants to buy them that are not Patreon members. We understand you'll get your access and opportunity. We're just waiting on them. We don't really know what the holdup is. So that will be available to all soon. If it changes before this episode goes live, we'll just edit this out and do something else. But otherwise, we'll keep you abreast of the situation. Keep an eye on the Patreon newsfeed. Remember, when we put things up on Patreon, you don't need to be a patron to read all of it. So when we do public feeds, it's just a way for us to kind of compile everything. I feel like it's redundant to have a website, to be honest, when we really just talk on that one platform. Okay. What else here? Oh, all right. So I have 3 different corrections that I need to get through. All aimed at me, all totally accurate. Logan Sweets writes in first and says, "Dear CDC, quick correction. Colin stated last week that we have 0 first or second party games announced to be coming after God of War Ragnarok, but this is not the case. Spider-Man 2 is announced for 2023 and will likely be one of PlayStation's biggest releases in years, not to mention Wolverine, KOTOR, Final Fantasy 16, etc. Thanks, and remember to take that chicken out for dinner every now and then." Okay, Logan, this is a totally valid argument. You're absolutely right about Spider-Man 2. Many people wrote in about this. Wolverine is not coming out in 2023. I would be very skeptical of that claim. I actually went and looked to see if they said that. They didn't, as far as I can say that. KOTOR is a third-party remake, third-party exclusive, rather. That's not what we're talking about. Final Fantasy 16 is the same thing. So those aren't corrections, but I will take the Spider-Man correction. Very well said. Spider-Man 2 is coming in 2023, apparently. And I believe it. Insomniac is very good. So that's correction number 1. Correction number 2, Derek Hoffman wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, just a correction for last week." He says, "You all said that Daxter was the last Jack game, but the Lost Frontier came out in 2019, 3 years after Daxter. The studio that developed it had a thing for continuing the PS2 mascot platformers, except for Sly Cooper, which the world just continues to give me the middle finger over. Keep being the best and keep slittering that head." Well, I am confused by one thing you said. Sly Cooper had a game more recently than Jack, but nonetheless, you're right. And what's weird about this, Dustin, this particular one, is when I was saying it, I'm like, I don't think that's true. But, I'm always clicking away. I'm always looking at my other monitor. I'm trying to get information, trying to keep things accurate as people are talking and whatnot, preparing for the next segments and stuff. And for some reason, I just didn't on that one. I was like, no. And I just let it go. But I knew, for some reason, I knew. And yet I was totally wrong. Yeah.
This happens on the Maddie and I were talking like a little bit of an intro for the Souls episode, and we were talking about my favorite right now, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I said, "Oh, there's one game out actually for that." It's not true. There are many JoJo games, but you can't. I was thinking about on PlayStation. It's hard when you talk for so many hours into a mic. It's sometimes you think something and then it doesn't come out the right way. So, but we like the corrections. We like to keep the record straight.
And so Daxter, of course, was made by Ready at Dawn, as we said, but High Impact Games was actually the company that did the last Jack game, The Lost Frontier. And they had done 2 Ratchet games as well before that. They're gone now. They've been gone for 10 years. But thank you for that correction. Appreciate it. Finally, Robbie Agnew wrote in and said, "Correction, there was a Heavenly Sword movie. It was super low budget and had no push into it, though. It's not terrible. Give it a shot." You're right about this, too. And for some reason, I had thought that this was one of those spoof ones when I had seen it. That it was like this. I remember when I was at IGN, so I remember it. But when IGN used to do like the fake trailers for everything,
right.
Harry Potter, Zelda, I thought Heavenly Sword was one of those, but it wasn't. There was a Heavenly Sword movie. Do you remember this?
No, I have no memory. I was actually trying to look it up now just to see how low budget it is, because I have a fondness for these low budget productions every once in a while. They can be the sweet spot of being so bad it's good.
I don't like. I was looking it up. It's from 2014. It's way late for that franchise, so that's so funny. Heavenly Sword came out in 2008, I want to say. So yeah, I don't know. I don't remember that at all. And for some reason, I just remember that being fake. I'm like totally losing my mind, I think, in some ways. Got to keep an eye on that. Also, no one wrote in about this, but I have to make another correction, which is that last week I said during our Game Pass conversation that Forza Horizon, the newest one, sold 10 million copies. That's not true. And this is an interesting, I want to kind of instruct people on this because this is an interesting way that I got tricked. I just looked up Forza Horizon 5, 10 million. I'm doing it right now on Google just to make sure. And it says that there's like one, like how when you Google something, Google will bring up something and like kind of show you an answer from a website, and then they'll show you all the options. The option that came up for me said it was from this website saying, yes, the game sold 10 million copies. And I'm like, okay. So then I look at, I take the time, as I should every time, to look at the rest. And I'm like, oh, that's not true. 10 million players. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to give Xbox a little too much credit.
Right.
10 million copies sold. No. Yeah.
Google can be deceiving. This exact same thing has happened to me. I think it was when I was on Maddie's show a few years ago, where you just, your gut instinct is read the top because surely that's the correct answer. But no, Google can be deceiving.
Definitely. All right. Dylan Michael wrote in, unfortunately, Chris isn't here to defend himself, but here it is nonetheless. Says Colin, Christopher, and Dustin, I need a ranking of your drip. I believe that this means like your clothing.
Yes.
Colin's fit on the last episode of a flannel style hoodie over a Jets t-shirt was fire. And every now and then, Dustin butts out an anime shirt that doesn't look like Hot Topic. Cringe. Chris, though, I'm sad to report, not much drip. My drip ranking would be Dustin at 1, Colin at 2, and I wouldn't even rank Chris. Overall, though, I expect more from the number 1 PlayStation podcast in the world. See, now I'm surprised by this all around because I'm not really, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I'm not really putting a lot of effort into the appearance thing. With the shot, with the beard, I look like I'm in the fucking Taliban right now with this thing. But at some point, you have to accept that I am what I am and I am who I am. I'm not getting up in the morning, putting on my finest threads, as the kids say, and stepping in front of the camera. I'm literally wearing the same t-shirt that I was wearing to bed last night, right now. So I don't feel like I deserve a lot of credit for going on into my closet. I walk into the closet, there's like a whole range of things, and I just grab a sweatshirt and put it on. I don't know that I like your credit. I want your credit, but not for unearned things. And I feel like it's especially harsh for Chris because it's harsh for Chris because I feel like he does a really nice job. He's actually quite stylish, in my opinion. And I feel like you have always the litany of t-shirts. So I feel like this is a little bit upside down. What do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, to defend Chris, there's certain things that Chris wears I think he looks very cool in that I don't feel like I can pull off. I'm jealous of. In particular, I believe he has like a sleeveless jean jacket. The Delson outfit that he looked just fantastic. Just total, top tier drip, as the question would say. So I don't know if that's fair. Maybe this is a new listener. Chris is traveling right now. Okay, he can't be on his top tier drip game all the time. But so I'll say that as far as being ranked number 1, I appreciate that. Obviously, that's in the eye of the beholder. Not everyone is going to appreciate a custom Misato t-shirt. Now, did I read the document and decide to change my shirt in order to have my finest anime shirt? I'm not going to reveal that.
That's interesting.
I'm not going to reveal that, but it is certainly possible that I did do that. But it is funny doing this show. On the days that this show is recording, I do consciously think about what shirt I'm going to wear. And it's not always like I got to wear the best shirt. I just am thinking I want to change it up. I want to wear different stuff because I do like I like the apparel. I like the shirts and the jackets and I'm not trying to look top tier, but I don't know. It's somewhere in the middle.
It's interesting. Yeah. See, my clothing day doesn't begin until really towards the end of the previous day. Because between like 5 and 6 is when I work out. And then at that point, I work out, I'm gross. Then I go take a shower. Then I change. I put on a new t-shirt. I put on new boxers or whatever. And then I usually eat dinner and then we settle in for the night. Then I go to bed. I wake up the next morning. You go about your business, you clean yourself up, brush your teeth, all that kind of stuff. But I leave the same shirt on and then I go about my business and then I shower again after we're done with all of this nonsense that we have to do every day. So I think that's what's kind of frustrating is because I would have to pick out my shirt the day before and then wear it into the show. I don't have that kind of wherewithal to do that. All right, let's see what else is going on here. Oh, Zach Capuzzo wrote in and said, hey, Colin, I really miss reading your controversial food-related tweets. The grilled onions plus mozzarella stick and a hot dog bun is always stuck inside my fat kid-like brain because it's excellent. So what heinous combos have you been into lately? Do you still do OMAD? 1 meal a day. I do OMAD still. I have actually, so we have a sponsor coming up, and this is not a planned thing. We have a sponsor coming up for Athletic Greens, which is like the supplement company. And so I've been drinking their like it's not a protein shake, but it's like their like in nutrition shake. So I've actually been breaking my fast like in early afternoon, mid-afternoon to do that. But it's all vegetable, so it doesn't really matter. And it's actually nice. It's like I'm totally happy to work with this company. It's really good. But nonetheless, nighttime rolls around. We eat between 7:30 and 8. I do all my eating still within that hour or two. And I think I'm eating a little too much recently. Not dinner. Like I'm not eating too much with dinner because I'll basically have 2 servings of whatever we're having. But I'm going crazy with the EL fudge lately. Like I gotta back off the EL fudge. They're so good. You know what I've been doing? This is how you know Colin's psychotic. Is because first of all he's referring to himself in the third person, but also because I bought on Walmart.com a 24-pack of creamy Maruchan ramen. Chicken ramen. I love that stuff. The creamy chicken Maruchan.
The creamy, I've heard of this. Yes,
the yellow packaging.
Right.
And I've been replacing my dessert with ramen every night, and somehow,
awesome.
that is like half the amount of calories that I was eating for dessert. And so, because I'm not foolish enough to think that like I'm going to eat my meals and then I'm just not going to have dessert, because I go 22 hours or 23 hours without eating, and I need to make sure that I'm not going to be hungry, because it sucks. Like when you get hungry, I'm in a pretty good rhythm with it. So I need to eat enough. I'm probably eating like 3,000 calories or something like that a day. But I work out every day pretty intensively. So yeah.
My problem, you said about, you get into cycles of eating too much. Right now, my problem with it being Valentine's Day, Holly baked cookies for all of her students. She's a voice teacher. So there was, of course, a plate for me that's been here the last few days. But in addition, Holly's mom, shout out, made me these delicious peanut butter chocolate. I think she calls them meltaways. They're just like these little fudgy, chocolatey peanut butter cups. And man, my problem is I have no self-control. If it's not in the house or whatever, that's fine. I won't necessarily go seek it out all the time. But when I have everything at my disposal that's just there, I'm going to go nuts. I probably ate like, I don't know. Yesterday, I probably had like 8 or 9 cookies throughout the whole day. It's just, 1 or 2 here or there. You get a little hungry later. You have another one. It's not good. It's bad. But I guess the question was about strange eating, heinous combos. Are you still doing it now, Colin? The thing that I've always been shocked by was the cheese from the chips.
Oh yeah, that's good stuff. I haven't done that in a long time. Like that's a phase I'll go back to at some point. My thing, I mean, it's not my thing right now because I've always been like this, but Micah facilitates it so much that I just play into it, which is everything's a sandwich. Like every day for dinner, I have a sandwich. 2 of them actually, 2 sandwiches. Now here's the problem is that, and this is compounded it, Micah will make whatever meat. Sometimes it's like burgers or something, but sometimes it's like, oh, there's like a beef or burritos or something. I'm like making a sandwich out of that. Here's chicken cutlets, making a sandwich out of that. Here are chicken breasts, making a sandwich out of that. Here are chicken thighs, making a sandwich out of that. Here's pork chop, making a sandwich out of that. Here, so on and so forth. But for Christmas, I bought Mike a KitchenAid mixer. It's one of the things she asked for. I bought her many other things too. I don't want to make it seem like I was just buying her like a vacuum cleaner or something.
Yeah.
I bought her a sword, which really
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
And an Xbox Series X for their loft and so on and so forth. But amongst these things was a KitchenAid mixer she always wanted. And what has this done to her? Because she's always been really into cooking, and I like cooking too, but she's made me so lazy that I just don't cook anymore. And she's baking now, and she's baking bread like almost every day. And so now the problem is that I have this wonderful meat that she's cooking, and then this homemade bread. She's making homemade Kaiser rolls, homemade everything cheeseburger or hamburger buns, homemade white bread that we make grilled cheese with. And I'm like, this is fucking insanity. You know?
Yeah. Colin, I know this road too well.
I know, I've heard.
Holly, yeah. Well, that's the thing is that Micah and Holly, since the Last Stand event, have become closer and closer, and they're sharing recipes. Recently, actually, a recipe that Micah gave to Holly was this this oat sweetbread of some kind. Man, that shit was fire. And I just it's one of those things that like you're watching something, it's like 11 o'clock at night, you shouldn't eat anything else, maybe it's midnight, man, just a little slice of that bread with some butter on top. You know that's where it's at.
I'm getting like, it's so funny because I could only imagine how obese I would be if I didn't work out. Like it's like I have like a gut, but it's not very big, but it's there. But I'm stronger in my upper body than ever in my legs. I'll tell you right now. I'll kick you right out of a fucking right through a dry. I don't even know what I'm saying. Drywall. That's what I was trying to say. I'll kick you through something.
Sure.
But the gut, the middle area, the spare tire situation, I have to surgically go at that. Not literally, but I have to surgically go at that. But I think removing some of the sugar and chocolate and stuff that I'm eating, because I'm actually not a sweets guy. But I love like carbs. That's the problem. So I need to kind of get on that. But anyway, to your question here, who wrote in? Zach. I still do OMAD. It's the only reason that I'm not rolling out of bed and like Violet Beauregard rolling around. You be rolling me around. Thank you for writing in. The mozzarella hot dog, by the way. Good shit. Good shit.
A lot of people talking about that. Some of them not familiar with the lore.
Yeah,
you got to come out the lore.
Yeah, you got to take a hot dog bun. You like a smaller one. I like the big hot dog buns for like sausages and stuff, but you want like a kind of like a ballpark style hot dog bun, like a small one, and just put a mozzarella stick or two right in there instead of your hot dogs. And I'll tell you what. Otherwise, do whatever you're gonna do to it. I put mayo, ketchup, onion on it. It's really good. Salt, a little salt, pep. I don't know what the fuck we're talking about. Corey Christensen wrote in, said on Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, it is Vita's 10th birthday. What are Sacred Symbols doing for this occasion? What are your favorite Vita memories? I have to think about this. First of all, it's interesting because I don't know if you recall this. Remember, Vita was available a week early for people if they pre-ordered it. I don't know if you remember that. So it came out, I think it was the 15th. You can get it if you were like in certain places. But I had mine since December the year before. And so that date means very little to me, unfortunately, because by that point we had played, beaten, and reviewed all of the Vita launch games. So for me, it was that December 2011, January 2012 era when I was playing a lot of these games that I really look back on fondly. And I cannot believe that was 10 years ago. There's a lot to say. I think we should do more Vita-centric content, and I think we will moving forward. But I will say this. My favorite Vita memory is I put 2 games on that thing. 2. And it's so gratifying that we got our products on it. And we would still make our new games would still come to Vita as long as they would have let us, but we cannot get our new games on Vita, unfortunately. So getting Twin Breaker and Habroxia 2 on there, both games I wrote, was the most gratifying thing. It's exciting that they're everywhere, but I don't give a shit compared to them being on Vita. It's like, yeah, they're on PlayStation 4. It's like, oh, cool. I'm so happy that we got to play a small role in that, especially late in the life. Like Lily Mo was one of the few studios and publishers that were putting games on and people were buying. So we're very grateful because we did very well there too. But those are my favorite Vita memories. Do you have any favorite Vita memories? Did you have a Vita at launch?
Not at launch. I got mine before the PS4 came out, but the PS4 was announced at that point. So I'm not like one of the late stage Vita, but I'm not early on either, somewhere in the middle. But what's funny is when I bought it, I remember I bought it at a GameStop and I asked for a Vita and the guy there was like, "Are you sure you want to get one of those?" Like, yeah, I am sure. He's like, "Okay, because it doesn't seem to be doing very well." Okay, well, yeah, I want that. Well, and then he went to ring me out and I realized that someone I knew was also working there. And I was like, "Oh, did you get a pre-order for the PlayStation 4 yet?" He's like, "No, I'm getting an Xbox One." And I jokingly, because I knew this guy, I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay." Just like just a little friendly joke. Mm-hmm. But then the guy that tried to talk me out of buying this Vita was like, "Well, at least Microsoft has their networking figured out." And he got real like fanboyish on me at the GameStop. Nice. And I'm like, okay. I just was like, all right, dude. Like, it's whatever you want is fine. I was just playing around with this other guy that I knew. But yeah, it's just funny. I think about that guy trying to talk me out of buying the Vita and how he was a moron. I mean, frankly.
Yeah, it's a lot of people being like, "Man, it's too bad about Vita." It's like, well, where were you? I was there. I didn't see a lot of you there, but I was there. Go look at those trophies. You'll see those welcome park trophies. You'll see the timestamps on them. Don't fuck with me on this. I'm sick of it. Wow, I got a little angry there. I don't know why. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Sacred Symbols listeners get 10% off their first month of sessions at betterhelp.com/symbols. It's important that we all take a holistic approach to self-care. The physical aspects are straightforward enough. We should all be eating better, working out when we can, and getting a good night's rest. But when it comes to your mind, things get a little more complicated. For countless people around the world, an excellent tool to worry about the latter half of the body-mind continuum is therapy, and BetterHelp offers a modern variety of therapy that fits with the time and place perfectly. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. All of this is key to how BetterHelp works, because you don't have to drive somewhere or get on a bus or in an Uber, go to some office, sit in a waiting room, and then following your session, do it all in reverse. There's no reason why therapy can't be just as effective over the phone or via video, for instance. And making matters even better is that BetterHelp is more affordable than in-person therapy. They work fast to connect you to a therapist, too. Indeed, you'll be matched with one in less than 48 hours. These last few years, I've tried to be especially cognizant of my mental health. For many people, including many of the more than 2 million people who have used BetterHelp, therapy is an effective tool to work through what's on your mind, whether it's relationship issues, problems at work, anxiety and depression, or more. Talking to someone is good for you, especially when they know how to listen and are educated in all the ways you can better yourself and your situation. I believe in therapy, and I think BetterHelp's emphasis on accessibility makes it an important option. So perhaps it's time, my friends, to give therapy a try for yourself. To get 10% off your first month of therapy sessions, head to betterhelp.com/symbols. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS. Take good care of yourself and consider therapy with BetterHelp at betterhelp.com/symbols. All right, let's get into the news. Some of the things, smaller items that we have to get through. First of all, there's a countdown Capcom has put up on its website. This countdown, just by means of time, means that we cannot talk about it on this episode. We must wait until the next episode, at which point it'll be revealed. The unfortunate thing is that will happen in between when this goes live on Patreon and when this goes live for free feeds. So you will know the answer by the time many thousands of you hear this. Tens of thousands of you hear this in free feeds, and we're sorry about that. We just can't do anything about it. The two theories, though, about this announcement, Dustin, is Resident Evil 4 Remake and Street Fighter 6. I don't know. I feel like there's indications that it's both. I know that there was this one Twitter account that seems to be promoting it that is Street Fighter affiliated. I know some people have pointed that out. I'm more liable to think that this is Resident Evil 4 Remake just because there are so many percolating rumors about it right now. But it could be one or the other. I think I'd be happy to see either. What do you think we'll see? And I think this is a big kicker here. Do you think that this will be a PlayStation exclusive? Because if it's Street Fighter, it may be. And I'm wondering what you think.
That's definitely possible. I feel like Street Fighter makes a lot of sense just from the timing. We're a year into this gen, and they probably would prefer to have that game out on the earlier side of a generation just because they view Street Fighter more as a platform game now for stretching out for tournaments and whatever going forward. I can tell you what this isn't, though, Colin, is that some people, there's a tweet going around about, look, I looked into the code and Microsoft is buying Capcom.
Yeah, that was so stupid with the misspelled Phil.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a lot of people caught on pretty quick that wasn't the case. But I think I was streaming and someone came in and said, "Did you hear the Xbox buying Capcom?" I'm like, "No, they're not." And then it's just, don't take everything instantly as truth. Take a look.
Right.
But I don't know. Resident Evil could be possible as well if they're, I don't know. Do you think Resident Evil 4 Remake for later this year? Are they trying to get Resident Evil on a yearly-ish cycle?
Yeah, that's reasonable to ask because we have Resident Evil 7 in 2017, and then Resident Evil 2 Remake's 2019, right? Resident Evil 3 is 2020. Village is 2021. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think it's time. Yeah, we're hearing a lot of weird things from sources that indicate a different sort of game too, like not a pound for pound remake, which is sort of what they did with 3 as opposed to 2, as I recall. It's been a while. All these games are kind of muddled up. It's like, I love Resident Evil, but I played all those games and they're all mashed up in my mind.
Right.
But I think it's more likely that it'll be Resident Evil, but I don't know. I think that if it is Street Fighter 6, I do think it is exclusive. I think that would be weird to go back to Xbox at this point, although maybe Capcom would be willing to do that. I think Sony would do anything possible not to do that because, as you've noted, Dustin, in the past, that was basically the killing blow to the fighting game genre on Xbox. I don't know why Sony would give that up. Maybe Capcom would want to get that back, but
and it's one of the biggest games at EVO, which Sony now owns. So they definitely want to have that synergy there.
Oh, that's true. right, so we'll keep an eye
word.
on that. There's also a countdown that will be known by the time we record next week as well for something with Shin Megami Tensei. And I don't know. We'll find out what it is when the time comes. Okay. This was a weird one. I was going to type this up as a proper news item, but I don't think it really is. But it is important. Haven Studios has already lost its co-founder and its chief operating officer, COO. And this is reported by GamesIndustry.biz. And it notes that Sebastian Puel, who was a longtime marketer and then producer at Ubisoft, he was there for 15 years or so, is gone and has left. And Haven said this in a statement to Games Industry, quote, "It's with great sadness that we share the studio departure of a founding Haveneer, Seb Puel. Seb is a rare talent whose career and track record as a leader speak for themselves, and we will miss his energy and enthusiasm as we continue our journey at Haven. Seb remains a dear friend of the Haven team, and we wish him the very best in his next adventures," end quote. So it sounds like it's on good terms, although that could just be corporate speak because it looks really bad that a year into your studio that's making a PlayStation exclusive that is flush right now with cash, no doubt, he's leaving. And I find this incredibly suspicious. Now, similar to Jade Raymond, it is important to know that Puel is not a creative. He was started as a marketer. In fact, he was a marketer at Capcom before he went to Ubisoft, and he worked on series like Breath of Fire and Mega Man. But he went on to Ubisoft and had a pretty prolific career, first as a marketer and then as a producer. And he produced and executive produced a bunch of Assassin's Creed games and others. Right up to Unity and its DLC before he left. So I find this peculiar. He's part of the organizational might of the studio, but he is somewhat redundant to Jade Raymond, who is also a production head. So I don't think this hurts them creatively, but I think I don't know. Like I saw this and I was like, oh man, how is that even possible? I think there's something up here, and I don't know if we're going to learn about it, but I'm wondering what you think.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't spell anything good from a first glance, no doubt. There's, of course, possibilities that maybe he was given some kind of offer from another company that he just doesn't want to refuse. Is it possible? I don't know.
What could be better than co-owning a team?
Right. Yeah. Unless it's just like an insane amount of money, which I don't know how valuable he is in particular, not any detriment to him. I'm not aware. I mean, there could be external factors as well. I don't know if maybe he has a family and he's had to move around and his new family the placement isn't working where they are. I don't know. It could be
anything. It's true. It could
be any number of different possibilities. But overall, I think it's a completely fair point to question, like you said, the dream, I think, for a lot of developers is to co-own or own something and have something be your own. So to step away from that is definitely odd.
Yeah, it's peculiar. I'm going to be really interested to learn more about that because I feel like, first of all, very few people are talking about this. First of all, it really disappoints me when I read even websites that I like. And I'm like, why aren't you writing about this? This is a big deal that this studio that Sony jumped into bed with very quickly out of nowhere, weeks into their founding, as we said famously, no logo, no website, no seeming charge. They're still a small team that are scaling up, but I don't know. I feel like this is the team I'm most skeptical of by far out of the three that they announced in the second party capacity last year, the others being Deviation and Firewalk. I think that this is the one that's most suspicious, especially because as we learned last week, they're doing something that sounds a lot like Dreams combined with like TikTok or something. And maybe he was like, I don't want to do that shit. But that's what you got. I don't know, man. Got to be very careful and deliberate when you're getting into these business deals. I'm sure he's got his reasons. It could be health related, family related, like you said. Who knows? We'll find out. All right. I wanted to know what you thought of this. Our friend Rick Hogue, legal analyst for Last Stand Media, of course, prolific lawyer extraordinaire, friend of the show. He did a video that a lot of people are writing about how Sony is deceptively marketing Horizon Forbidden West, the much anticipated game. By the time this goes live for audiences, this podcast, everyone will be playing. We'll be excited to play too. We don't get early games, so we'll be playing right alongside with you, and we're excited about that. But he's basically saying, and I went through the motions and actually spoke to him offline about it. I did exactly what he said you can do, and it worked. And basically what he's saying is that if you go on PlayStation 5 and buy pre-order Horizon Forbidden West, that they'll charge you $70, and there's no option to not pay $70 if you're logged into PS5. if you go into PS4, you can buy the PS4 version that can be later segued to be the PS5 version with a free transfer. And that only costs $60. Most keyly, I think, Dustin, you can go on your app, on PlayStation app, and just toggle whichever one you want. And I did that. I literally took a video and put it in our Discord because I was like, this is literally what it is. It's just 3 options, like the special edition, but then the PS5 version and the PS4 version is just inexplicably $60. And it's like, why would you buy the $70 version? This seems dishonest. The only advantage, and I think it's a substantial advantage actually, more than people are saying, is that you can preload the PS5 version by buying it. I am stopped from preloading the game. It won't even acknowledge it. It's asking me to buy it again. I was going to do it to see if it would actually charge me the full cost again, but I'm like, that's an expensive experiment.
Right.
And they probably would. So
yeah,
this is a big piece of drama. People have been writing in about it, wondering why we hadn't talked about it. And it's because it really wasn't a news item when we were discussing things last week. I also don't pre-order games until they're in the preload state, and then I'm like, all right, fine, I'll load it to my console now at this point. So this is something that I think is quite weird. I'm wondering what your feeling is on this. I think Hogue is getting some heat from people saying he's putting a little too much into it, but I disagree. This is as I said to him offline, I'll gladly say what I said to him privately to everyone. I was like, this is a couple $1 million move for them. Like, this is they know exactly what they're doing. And it's not much money, but they're making a little bit of cash by just saying, fuck it. You'll figure it out or you won't. And I find it's deceptive. This is the cross-generation problem we're in, because unlike Returnal or Ratchet and Clank, this is a PS4 game. And that's why I think they should have just charged $60 for it, period. But what do you think?
So this comes back to the fact that Jim Ryan fucked up a few years ago. I'm looking at this where we have the games industry, or not Video Game Chronicle article up that brings up his quote from an interview where he said the PS5 version of those games are built from the ground up to take advantage of the PS5 feature set. We have an upgrade path for PS4 users to get the PS5 version for free. It's about people having choice. I'm really quite pleased about the situation. Let's just read that again. It's about people having choice. So Sony PR and Jim Ryan forgot that he said this. Straight up, they forgot, because you will remember when they announced the different versions of the game along the release date, the special edition, whatever, there was no mention of this upgrade path at all. And it wasn't until people put the fire to Sony saying, hey, you said this, that suddenly they're like, oh, don't worry, we're going to do the upgrade path. Like, do you think that the internet is going to forget that you said that?
That's a good point.
I don't know. That's my question, is that did they legitimately forget that Jim Ryan in an interview said there would be a free upgrade path and then said, oh, fuck, we got to change things around. But here's the problem now, is that if you make a mistake, own it and make it right by your customers. But instead, they're fucking around and doing this weird shit where they're trying to just coax people into getting, especially from a digital standpoint, the PS5 version, and just like, oh, no, it's 70. The upgrade path, well, you're on PS5. Just buy the PS5 version. It's like, no. If it's, Jim, if it's about people having choice, if that's what it's about, then let people buy the PS4 version on the PS5 and then just upgrade it. Or you know what? Better yet, if you really, Jim Ryan's like, let's play some video games. If you really want to make this right, you know what you should have done is just make this game $60 instead of the split pricing, because clearly you changed your strategy somewhere along the way. That's fine. It's okay to change strategies. We don't like the $10 extra, the split pricing. It's weird to me, but just make it right by the customer. And you're clearly not doing that.
Yeah, it's strange to me, because on one hand, I understand the increase in cost for games, new gen games. Like, sure, I'm one of the few people that will tell it straight, regardless of how popular it is. Game pricing is not sustainable. $70 games basically just keep up with inflation over that time, before the inflationary cycle that we're in right now. Doesn't make up for the fact that these games are just costing more because expectations are higher. You might not like hearing that, but it is nonetheless true. And so there is a part of it where I'm like, okay, PS5 game, new generation, new tools, new engine, perhaps, whatever the case might be, new middleware, new knowledge. But I will tell you, regardless of what Sony says, and I don't know if they said it or not, Forbidden West started as a PS4 only game. I know that for a fact. And it was brought at some point to PS5, where it no doubt looks beautiful. I've been on such a blind, like, I don't know anything about Forbidden West. It's actually amazing. Like, I've totally avoided everything about it. I see these little gifs sometimes of her like going underwater, and I'm like, oh, I don't even want to see that, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm totally ignorant on a lot of these things, but I feel like for me, when you have the cross-gen stuff, you got to just bite the bullet from a marketing standpoint. I don't know why Sony is so confident that they can withstand PR blow after PR blow, because they think it's like, they think that these are just glancing shots, but I think it's death by 1,000 cuts, or at least you're risking that, because people are asking like, what is up with that? And they remember it. Just like they're asking like, what's up with Martha is Dead, which we're going to talk about in a little while. Like, what's up with that? Why are you doing that? Right? Like, why are you censoring Devil May Cry 5? Or why are you saying this? Or why are you doing that? Or they have to have a more linear route to communicating with the audience. It's not sufficient. And this seems shady. And I think what's most interesting about what Hogue was saying was that this could potentially open them up to a class action suit. Now, I don't think it will. I don't think it should. But what I think that Sony should do, if Sony gives a shit about its customer base, everyone that bought it on PS5 digitally should get $10 in their wallet. And that should happen automatically without having to fill out some bullshit. It should just, there should be a post saying, mea culpa, we're sorry. It was the wrong call. It's nothing to us to give you this money back. Nothing. Right? So I think, and the $10 in this day and this age, it's a lot of money, man. Mm-hmm. It's nothing to just wipe your ass with. So I'm disappointed in this. And so now, the one thing I'm concerned about, and I will find out by the time this podcast goes live, it'll already been answered. I can't preload the game. It preloads the PS4 version on my PS5, but it will not let me have the PS5 version. And I am wondering when they are going to flip that switch. Are they going to be a little slow? Right? And be like, we're going to reach for it real slow today and get it 12 hours afterwards. Oh, there it goes. Or is it going to be like a day and date automatic thing where I can download the game? Because I feel like that would be the only advantage to having paid the extra $10, is to at least know that I was going to get going. But Micah reminded me, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just do it. And she's like, dude, you're not going to be awake at midnight playing this thing. So what the fuck do you care? And that was a good point. I'm staying firm. So anything else to add to this before we go on?
No, just that a lot of times people, particularly the last couple of weeks, we've been really hard on Xbox and Game Pass or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this is one area where I'm like, yeah, Sony, take a page from Microsoft's book here. You know, we've mentioned and many times on the show the idea of smart delivery and how it's so much better and makes much more sense as a term than we had thought before the Series X and Series S came out. But now it's just like this nickel and diming bullshit. Just enough. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too in this $60, $70 situation with this game, and it's just I don't know. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm sure it does for many, many other consumers out there.
Definitely. Yeah. I hope people will remember. I mean, this is what we say all the time. You got to just remember and let me back up. You don't have to do anything. But if you care about this and you bitch about it, which a lot of you do, and that's fine, then you must withhold your money because they don't care. It's what I used to say about Electronic Arts when they used to win the consumerist worst company in the world thing every year. I'm like, they don't give a fuck. I mean, that's not a good look for them, but they outlasted the Consumerist. I used to love that website. They outlasted the entire bracket that they used to do and all that. Like, EA's still there because when they won worst company in the world, people were still buying Madden. They were still buying FIFA. They were still playing Titanfall. They were still on Battlefield. It was like, they're like, okay, whatever, man. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the worst company in the world. That's fine. It's the same thing with Bank of America getting that too. It's like, yeah, whatever. Take your money out of us and then maybe we'll care. So I want to read this question from Ryan Goldner, though, Dustin, that I think will allow us to expand a little bit on what seems to be their first-party strategy this year, maybe second-party strategy, rather, this generation, with their pricing. And they say, hello, Colin and his trusty party members. Well, only member today. If we're playing Final Fantasy, Chris is in a swoon right now. My question is in regards to a first-party game or first-party game pricing. Is it me, or have first-party titles strictly on the PS5 remained at a higher price point for longer than the last generation? Demon's Souls is at $40 as a launch. Demon's Souls is at $40 as a launch title. Ratchet and Clank is just reaching $50, and Returnal and Ghost of Tsushima are at $50 as well. If I am just crazy, let me know. But games from last generation after a year or even 6+ months could typically be found at $20 or $30. Is Sony trying to go the Nintendo approach and maintain their game's value, or could it be contributed to the lack of PS5s in the wild? Whereas they want to continue to sell as many individual games at a higher price point, given the lesser amount sold at launch. So this is a really good inquiry. And I think, Dustin, we don't know for sure, but I think the answer is yes, they're doing that on purpose. And I think part of the reason is just because they can.
Definitely.
There are not that many options right now for PlayStation 5 games still. I mean, not meaningful ones. So when you still go buy your PlayStation 5, if you just found one today for the first time and you're so excited, it's like you're still going to buy Demon's Souls. You're still going to buy Miles Morales. You're still going to buy Ratchet and Clank and Returnal. There's nothing else to buy. So what do you think about this?
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting too is that the Demon's Souls being $40 is on sale right now, and that sale ends on March 3rd. And yeah, I think this definitely has to do with the fact that there's still so many people that are buying and bringing home a PS4 or PS5, their first one, whatever, and they're looking at Sony's first party lineup, which we've always said is the bread and butter of these consoles. And so, yeah, they're willing to pay the premium because they absolutely want to play Miles Morales. They want to play Demon's Souls. That's one of the selling points of these consoles right now, is these exclusive games. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it sucks that they're still expensive and not been brought down in price. I mean, Demon's Souls at $40. I mean, that's actually pretty good on sale right now. But at the same time, it's like, it's the Nintendo thing. They still have maintained the value because of the rollout of PS5. So of course they're going to keep it at that high price as long as people are willing to pay it. As soon as copies of Demon's Souls, Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank start going down, then expect the price to go down as well.
Yeah, well said. I also feel like I'm struggling with this notion that it's incumbent on the brands to maintain the value built into their games. Sony's value is only seen in the quality of games. And if they don't price them appropriately from their perspective, then why wouldn't you wait? I think maybe in the PS4 era, people were trained a little too well from their perspective to wait, because they would slice $10, $20, $30 off a game fairly quickly. If you're I'm not a normal person. Dustin's not a normal person. We work in this world, right? I play video games every day, and sometimes for hours at a time. And that's a very lucky and fortuitous situation. But many people, this is their hobby. They have other things going on. Before you know it, I'm sure days, weeks, and even months pass of you not playing a game because you don't have an opportunity to do so. Before you know it, you sit down in the fall and you look back and you're like, oh, Horizon's $30 now. Well, of course it is, because that's the way Sony used to do it. But for some reason, no one gets mad at Nintendo for keeping the prices high. But I respect that, because they've trained their audience to say, like, listen, this shit's not going down in price, so you might as well buy it now. And they do. By the millions and millions and millions, it works. The only thing that they have to keep in mind is the quality, which they pretty much always hit. So Sony can play the same game. The ecosystem will be treated as seriously from a financial point of view as they treat it themselves. And if you keep your shit cut and budget like they do, then people are going to notice. And that's why I think on the PSN front, on the other end, they should really be watching this bullshit that's going on. Not just from a trophy perspective and all of that, but just from a value perspective. People don't want to buy your $99 or $199 fucking games on PlayStation. Get them out of there. You know? So they got to keep an eye on all of this, I think, at the same time. It's an interesting inquiry. And I think as the generation moves on and we find these, like Wolverine, Spider-Man, these other next-gen only games, we'll see how they treat them. I think it'll be different. Okay. Thank you for writing in, Ryan. I thought this was interesting. Just a quick note. The Last of Us on HBO, it's not coming out in 2022. This has been confirmed by Deadline, the movie, TV, etc. entertainment website. And they talked to Casey Bloys, who's HBO and HBO Max's chief content officer. And he says it's not going to air in 2022, in quotes. They are still shooting in Canada. I imagine you will see it in 23, end quote. What do you think of that? I thought maybe it would be ready to go, because, you know, HBO usually does these 4, 6, 8, 10 episode kind of things. I thought maybe they'd be ready to go this fall, but that's clearly not the case. In fact, they're still casting for some various roles and have open casting, I think, for extras and stuff, which is exciting if you're in those areas. I think they're recording or shooting in like Alberta, Saskatchewan, that kind of area. So what do you think about this? No HBO The Last of Us until 2023. Thus, I think maybe we don't see the game until 2023, or do we see the game in the fall of 2022 as a prelude to the show?
I think it's their best bet to wait till the show is close for the game. You want to, man, using the word synergy again, but it makes sense that, you know, people want to play the game around the same time that they're watching the show, or, you know, just to, in order to, while it's on people's minds. As far as the show coming out in 23, it's a little surprising just because I thought something in my mind told me that they were in the process of wrapping up filming. But according to this article here, they're still filming in Canada. So from that perspective, I could see that, you know, we don't know how much longer they're going to be shooting for. And I wonder, this show, it hasn't been picked up for a season 2 already, has it?
I don't think so. I haven't heard that, no.
I've never understood that. For example, that Halo show just got renewed for a season 2, and season 1 is not.
I always think that's my theory on that, by the way, just to cut in, is that that happens to secure either personnel before they're on to other things, and they want to basically just seal them away so that they don't sign to do other things, assuming that they're not going to, because that destroys shows sometimes. Also, right. I think maybe it's money. Like they're like, oh, we have you now for cheap before you even know what we have. Let's sign you again. And so it could be predatory in that way. That's my theory. I don't know.
Yeah, go on. That makes sense. So yeah, I would estimate early 2023, maybe like a March era, March timeframe for that. But I don't know. I'm feeling more and more optimistic about this show, and I don't really know why, because I haven't really heard any info that would change my mind. I'm still not crazy about the idea of it being a direct retelling, but I think that there's something to be said about the quality of HBO, the direct involvement from Neil Druckmann. There's a lot of positive aspects, and maybe I'm thinking about this more from the viewpoint as I think Uncharted comes out tomorrow, or today if you're listening to this on Friday. Uncharted movie's out to mixed reception. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little more later, but it feels different with this one now that I'm looking at all the different elements. So who knows though, maybe it'll be terrible. I hope not. I hope it's good.
I think that the combination of its association with HBO, which is very high quality, I don't think anyone would deny that. I don't like everything HBO does, but no one can deny. I think maybe amongst the highest quality TV shows. So it fits well with the PlayStation brand, first party brand. So there's that, but I feel like they're very loose and willing to talk about it, which is indicative that they like it, right? They probably have the pilot. It's probably done. And I would assume that they're like, yeah, let's continue to kind of keep this in people's minds. We'll give quotes about it and little interviews. We'll put out little splashes and seed stories. Every time someone's cast, they seed a story. It's not like a lot of other shows where you don't hear much until it's en route or people are already making fun of it. Like they're, unlike the Lord of the Rings stuff that's going on with Amazon and others, like no one seems to really be making fun of this, which is good. I think we don't have anything yet though. I think the real purity test will come when there's the trailer, and then we'll see how it feels.
Definitely.
But I'm confident as well. I don't really want it, by the way, but I'm confident. And I'll watch it, of course. And by the way, people have been writing in and asking about Uncharted. We have to go see that in the coming weeks. We have such a full stack of Sacred Symbols Plus episodes right now that we'll do one for that, but it'll come in the next few weeks. As we move further into the year, it's time to detach yourself from the wonder of seeing 2022 everywhere you look and begin to, well, seize the day. As we hopefully continue to return to normal, travel is going to be back on many of your itineraries, and what better complement to travel is there than learning the local language, so that when you arrive, you aren't Colin in Europe, speaking English and hoping for the best. A great, modern, and effective way to learn a new language is with Babbel, the language learning app that's so far garnered more than 10 million subscriptions. That's a lot of people, eager to learn one of 14 languages Babbel offers, from German and French to Russian and Norwegian, with all of the app's modern trappings. Unlike its competitors, which have lessons written by AI, more than 100 language experts contributed to Babbel's extensive suite of lessons, games, podcasts, quizzes, and more. You can even explore the app's deeper functionality by heading to babbel.com and using the checkout code SACRED, where you'll soon thereafter be practicing your pronunciation and accent before you know it. It's awesome. I took French for years when I was younger. When I jumped into Babbel and began French lessons anew, I was immediately struck by how much more obviously effective this brand of language learning is. This isn't middle school or high school class with a boring textbook and an even more boring teacher. Heck, I even took French in college, and Babbel exceeds that too, because it understands that we learn languages by immersing ourselves in them, and by providing bite-sized bits of information and allowing us to marinate over them, use our new knowledge practically, and more, we learn better. It's really that simple. It's why all of us took foreign languages for years in school, and almost none of us can still speak those languages. But you remember how to multiply 9 and 7, right? Obviously, something is off at the basic level of learning languages, and Babbel ameliorates that. So get started now. Right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to babbel.com and use the promo code SACRED. That's BABBEL.com with the promo code SACRED. Babbel, language for life. All right, quick note here on MLB The Show 22. As we know, MLB The Show 22 is due out on April 5th on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, in addition to Xbox One, Xbox X, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and Nintendo Switch. Now, until February 23rd, beginning by the time you hear this podcast until February 23rd, so in that window, some of you will hear this later, unfortunately, but it'll be available before you. Technical test is going on, free for everyone on all those platforms. So if you want to try out MLB The Show on Switch, if you want to try it on Xbox, if you've never done it before, or on PS4 and PS5, you can download the technical test. It's available for all, no sign up, no load limit or anything like that. It's all for matchmaking, cross-platform play, co-op, and all these other things. So if you're looking forward to maybe what will be the only baseball you get this year, because there is currently a labor dispute in the MLB, that will, if it stays the way it is now, preclude there to be any baseball played. So go check that out. Also, I wanted to see what you thought of this. Gran Turismo 7 comes out soon, and March 4th, actually. And it is 2 discs on PlayStation 4, 1 disc on PS5. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so this comes down to the type of disc that the PS5 uses is actually it's the Ultra HD Blu-ray, which this article you link kind of spells it all out. So I'm not going from memory. I don't know this that well, but I did know it was a different disc. But the Ultra HD discs support up to 100 gigs on a single disc, where I think, and I'm trying to see if it says here, I think the old ones were either 25 or 50 gigs, depending on if it's a dual layer disc or not. So yeah, that's one of the little advantages of the 4K disc player on the inside, is that games are also on it. So it's just 1 disc, which is nice.
I recall, I people have to remind me, but I think Gran Turismo 2 was on 2 discs on PS1. But I could be wrong about
right.
That. But what I wonder is if there's going to be a boot disc like Red Dead had, I think, and then play off. I was reading this GT Planet's forums, and someone was asking that question, which I thought was interesting. So keep an eye out for that, March 4th, Gran Turismo. We'll have more, by the way. We did an episode of Sacred Symbols Plus all about that. We'll do another one after the game comes out. All right. Hollywood Reporter is reporting that a Bioshock movie is in the works at Netflix. Take-Two has licensed this out. Vertigo Entertainment and Take-Two will produce. There's no one on board yet, so there's no one associated with it. This is just a project that was greenlit, which is exciting because I'm available to write it. Actually, what's most exciting is that Ken Levine should write it, but I doubt that they'll actually have him do that. Nonetheless, the game from 2007 is one of my favorite games of all time. Very well-respected game, as I think people know. And we should expect a remake, I think, according to the GeForce leak. This might maybe have something to do with it as well. What do you think of this? I'm skeptical because I feel like agency or lack thereof is the entire point of the game. And if you remove that, you have what would be an interesting dystopian period piece, which would be fun to see, but I don't think it's going to do the justice to it, especially with just the kind of the very basic choices of saving or sacrificing the little sisters and all the rest. So what do you think of this possibility of getting a Netflix Bioshock movie?
I'm skeptical on whether or not it will ever actually happen. It's a sexy marketing point to be like, hey, we're working on a Bioshock movie, but we've been hearing about a potential Bioshock movie since Bioshock basically came out, and it's never ever happened. It's never come to any fruition, and there's no one attached to this currently. So I kind of still feel a little skeptical about it. But I would hope, again, just like every other video game movie, that tell a story that isn't just retelling the game. And I think that Bioshock, man, it's so ripe for something that do a movie about the fall of Rapture, about 1969, in that New Year's Eve when it all went down, something like that. That would be awesome. Which I know that there's, I think the canon of it is questionable, but there is a Bioshock prequel book.
Yeah, I have it. I haven't read the entire thing though. Yeah,
it's fun. It's a fun read. Again, I don't know if it's considered canon or not. If it's, to me, it's almost like if Ken didn't write it, I almost don't consider it canon in my book, but that's just for me. But I think that, again, this is a world that has a rich history behind it that was not told in the game. Use the medium of filmmaking to do that, maybe better than a game could. I don't know. Maybe not. Because think about the fall of Rapture. This is when people were first starting to splice. So you don't have people going around fighting each other and shooting each other. So that wouldn't necessarily make sense for a fun game or a game that you could get a big budget behind.
I think part of me disagrees with you and part of me agrees with you, because the part of me that disagrees with you says Bioshock's not about stories. It's about one story, right? It's about like this very specific parable about this man finding this libertarian dystopia that's under siege and all the fucked up things that happen to it. And through the DLC, especially with Bioshock Infinite, when you see Rapture before the fall, before the Civil War begins, you see it in this pristine shape, and it does suggest that it's right for storytelling. So there's two things, right? Like where it's like, yes, of course you're right. All the splicers, all the different characters you meet, even just through audio files, and there's the doctors and all the different people, the geniuses and scientists, like the whole pantheon of researchers that were at the head of society. There is a lot to tell there. But in my mind, the more interesting storytelling possibility is actually Bioshock Infinite, because if you want to expand, first of all, Bioshock Infinite happens first, but also if you want to expand Bioshock's interaction with the world around it and make it feel like it's something that could really have new stories, then Bioshock Infinite is just much better, because Bioshock Infinite is all about Columbia interacting with the world, and it fights a war on its own, right? Like it on behalf of America, it leaves America, it does all this crazy shit. It's all about the world. And so there's obviously lots of stories in there about racism and all of the rest, but it just seems to me that Infinite would be the better place to go. And I hope that they find people that are smart enough to know that. Rapture is not inherently more interesting than Columbia. I love Rapture. I mean, I fucking love Bioshock, the first one, just so much. But I think that you want to start with Infinite and then go from there. But we'll see what happens. I think you're right though. I mean, all these things are optioned and nothing ever happens. And it's really just a pittance for these companies to say like, oh yeah, we'll give Take-Two $5 million for 2 years worth of time to just figure if we can get this off the ground. That's like nothing to them. And that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
We'll keep an eye out. And I agree with you, by the way. It's not Bioshock if it's not Ken Levine.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
That's why even though I've told a lot, I've broken a lot of news about the new Bioshock game, and it's fun to talk about, I'm forever skeptical until it gets the seal of approval from Ken himself. Like when I don't know if he knows about it or not, but like when the game comes out or is talked about, if it seems like he's keen on it, I think that'll be a good sign, because I don't think he was very keen on Bioshock 2. All right. I'm not reading. It's hard to do it with just the two of us, because I usually have time to read the things that we're having. I'm skipping a lot of people's questions today. I'm sorry. David Jacobs, I was going to use your question, but we didn't end up using it. However, I'll use Ruben Barrett's. He says, "Dear Sacred Symbols crew, the second Sonic the Hedgehog movie is due for release this year, and there is now news that a third film has already been signed off and is beginning production. Furthermore, a standalone Knuckles movie has been given the green light, leading into what some have dubbed the Sonic Cinematic Universe. It's too bad it's not the Sonic Universe Cinematic, because it would just be suck. At what point have we strayed too far from God and are in need of an apocalyptic reckoning that shall destroy our already tainted souls?" So this is true. Deadline also reports about Sonic expansion, third film, and Knuckles spinoff. So a fourth film with Idris Elba reprising his role. What do you think of this? I mean, I don't want to judge it too harshly because I don't like Sonic. I don't care about Sonic. It doesn't really matter. It's not germane. Obviously, the Sonic movie was very well received and did extraordinarily well. And by the way, how smart were they to say, like, we're going to fix Sonic? Like, I think Sega deserves a lot of credit for that, because I don't always like people bitching and whining, but we all agree that was an eldritch creature at very best, that original Sonic. Right. So they have this new movie, and similar, I think that there's so much heft and production, especially after production, post-production stuff going on with these movies, that you kind of have to just get them going. And I don't begrudge Sega that, because I don't feel like it feels that egregious. I think if they go much further than this without releasing movies and showing that they can do something with it, then that's cool. But they're kind of on a high. There's like a Sega renaissance going on right now. There's a lot of positivity coming out of that brand, and so I don't necessarily mind seeing it celebrated, because it's so funny that Sonic is finally culturally relevant. It took 30 fucking years to make Sonic truly relevant. And now he really is. It's not just relevant in games. It's not just relevant in some corners of fandom. It's like, this is a movie that made hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a crossover hit. So do you have anything to say about this, positive or negative?
I was in Target the other day and I heard a little girl walking by with her dad, and she was saying something like, I want to watch Sonic. I was like, what? And then I thought, I was like, well, yeah, obviously that's a perfectly normal thing to overhear. But it's just was so funny to me growing up. I was in 6th grade when Sonic 06 came out, and like Sonic was lame, and was lame for a very long time. And now it's just kids love Sonic. Like you said, he's on top of the world. And so I totally understand them wanting to just dump money into this Sonic film IP. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where it doesn't appeal to you or I, Colin, but a lot of people enjoyed it. And so, yeah, give the people more. It's just the question of when does it become oversaturated and annoying, which is really just what they'll do until the money goes dry. But this is just, I mean, the nostalgia plays are very big right now. It's not going away. We got a new live action Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers announced.
Yeah, that's unnecessary.
They announced a Blue's Clues movie that has all 3 hosts. It's like, dude, Spider-Man, which I'm not gonna lie.
That was pretty crazy. I only knew, I mean, I was too old for Blue's Clues always, but I remember the first guy, obviously. Steve, yeah.
I'm a big Steve fan. I grew up with Steve. And so when I saw that he was going to be in this film, I said, damn it, you got me. You got me. I might have to check out this Blue's Clues movie.
Yeah,
I might have to.
They got you. Now,
and that's the thing. The nostalgia is big, but sometimes they get you. Sometimes they get you, and you just got to go with it.
Definitely. I agree. And I don't think you're wrong at all. Like, just get your money while the going's good. And Sega seems to be a pretty good shepherd right now of product. Like, Yakuza's doing really well. Atlas is owned by Sega, and they're booming right now. I mean, it's like, okay, Sega, I see you. I understand. You have this perfect combination of nostalgia, quality, and this kind of feeling of comeuppance. Like, it's your time to shine. So you know what? Go do it. But you know what? Bring back Phantasy Star, for God's sake.
Yeah.
What is going on with that? Phantasy Star 4 came out in 1995. Can we get Phantasy Star 5? I don't want Phantasy Star Online. I'm glad people like that. Phantasy Star is so good, dude. Stop fucking around. I don't like that shit. All right. I wanted to touch on this again. Last week we talked about how Sims 4 is getting this gay marriage DLC. It's not really called that, but it's called My Wedding Stories. And there's one thing in there where there's like a lesbian relationship. And we were talking about how in Russia, this was not going to be released because it doesn't comport with Russian law, specifically regarding children's access, I guess, to what would be homosexual fiction, for lack of a better term. And so they've said this, though. Last week, we shared The below update, and it's still there on the same page, about our upcoming game pack, My Wedding Stories. At the time, we believed that our team could not freely share the storytelling of same-sex couple Cam and Dom in Russia, and decided the best way to uphold our commitment to sharing their story was not to release this pack there. Since then, we've been listening to the outpouring of feelings from our community, including both support for our decision and concern for their fellow community members. It's equally important for us to stand by our values, including standing against homophobia, and to share stories like this with those who want and need it most. With this in mind, we've reassessed our options and realized we can do more than we initially believed, and we will release the Sims 4 My Wedding Stories game pack to our community in Russia, unaltered and unchanged, featuring Dom and Cam. So that comes on February 23rd. Just wanted to acknowledge that was updated. It's interesting to me, Dustin, that the lawyers there didn't understand the law well enough to know that they just made a problem for them unnecessarily. The cynic in me says that they did this on purpose.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Colin. Is that there's a little part of me that's like, oh, was this a nice little PR move? But I don't know. I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt. But I don't know. Does EA and The Sims deserve that?
No, they don't.
I don't know.
They definitely don't. So, but nonetheless, they're doing the right thing. It's important to stand by. Right. I mean, this is why I keep saying it's important to stand by your content. And in a way they were. I mean, I can't blame EA too much. They said, we're just not going to release it. They didn't say we're editing it or taking it out. We're just not releasing it. I think that was the only other option. But who knows? I never trust corporations and what their intent are, what their intent is. Certainly not what their intent are. By the way, Video Games Chronicle has a piece of news here. I just wanted to throw this out there. Visual Concepts, which is the 2K-owned studio best known for NBA 2K, they're now doing WWE as well in place of Yuke's, the Japanese studio that long did that. They're working on another game. And Video Games Chronicle noted that a listing for a producer role, non-creative role, says, quote, our Foothill Ranch studio is looking for a seasoned producer to join our development efforts on an unannounced open-world driving game with a major license. This AAA title is targeted at multiple platforms. So this is basically the NBA and WWE studio, mostly NBA, doing something else, an open world driving game. What could it be?
The major license part is what's interesting to me.
Fast and Furious is the only thing I can think of that would be a major license that would make sense like that, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm trying to, because Hot Wheels already has a game going, or some kind of deals with other studios. We had that Hot Wheels game.
Yeah, that game was big.
Year.
That Hot Wheels game sold like 1 million copies, I think.
Supposedly it wasn't bad either. Yeah. It wasn't great, but it looked fun to me. I'm trying to think though, other than Fast and Furious, like what car related IP.
Yeah, I mean, I know so little that there could be others people like, oh, it could be this or this, but like maybe it's Driver or something like that, which could, but that's different developers and actually Driver's EA, isn't that would make any sense. So I'm trying to think in reverse because we were talking about Bioshock and the film being licensed earlier. And from my perspective, it's like, okay, it's Take-Two, same entity. Now they're working with a license outside. They're kind of getting into that cross-media play. They're making a cross-media play. But what is it? I don't know. I'm going to say Fast and Furious. Although there was that Fast and Furious game like a couple of years ago that was apparently like trash, like absolute abject trash. And so maybe it's not something that you want to go back to necessarily. We'll see. It's time for us to get into what we're playing. Now, I want to begin this with a letter from Samuel, or a note from Samuel. He says, hi, guys, UK listener. First time writing in, but I've tuned in forever. Welcome. I didn't know you guys had radios in the UK. Radios. Would love to see you speak more on the games you're playing. Love the show. This has been a piece of feedback we've been getting recently, that we're not talking enough about the games we're playing. And I'm wondering how you feel about that, whether you agree or disagree, because my opinion on this is we never really talk about the games we're playing, because that's for Sacred Symbols Plus. And that's not me saying like, I want you to subscribe and all that, because we release all of those ultimately for everybody, as you know. But it's more like this is a show about the news and the analysis and the ecosystem and what's going on. And what we're playing is kind of like a intermission, let's say, before we get into the rest of the news. I don't feel like it's the most important part of the show. I love doing the 60, 90, 120 minute deep dives into games like we do on Sacred Symbols Plus constantly. But I think people are not getting them recently because there's nothing coming out. Now we finally have things to talk about. Horizon, we're definitely going to do one on that. Dying Light 2, definitely going to do one on that. Elden Ring, definitely going to do one on that. I wanted to do one on Monarch, but it's getting bad reviews. So who knows? So we hear you loud and clear, but I would argue that that's never really been what this show is. And I don't know that I've ever really done that on any of my shows. Like where I'm like, let's get deep into this game on this main episode of Podcast Beyond in 2010 or something like that. Never happened. So I wanted to say that I hear you, but just be patient, because it's hard for us to talk too deeply about games when not all of us have played one, the same game that we can share. And also, I think people are getting a little ahead of their expectations with our particular show, because we don't want or have access to PR, so we have to wait till games come out. All of our competitors are going to be done talking about Horizon by the time we start talking about Horizon, which I personally think is a massive advantage to our show, by the way. But nonetheless, that's kind of where I wanted to place it. But I wanted to let you know, Samuel and others, that you are heard. Dustin, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think that I in particular want to be sensitive to not spoiling games as well.
Yes.
And so it's hard to get too deep into games. At least I feel like to have a solid conversation without spoiling things. And so I think that, I like to give, when we do what we've been playing, to me, it's like a little overview. Like I want to give you a little sample of my experience. Sometimes that's little, sometimes that's a lot. I'm excited to give you an update this week on a game that I've been playing and my experience with it. And I like saving the deep dives for individual episodes. Maybe we could be more in depth at certain points. But overall, I kind of in agreement that the show has mainly been a news show first and foremost.
Right.
And this is just to familiarize, like, hey, this is maybe something cool you should check out if what I'm saying about it appeals to you.
I wanted to read this letter from Niall G as well. It says, "Greetings, CDC. I want to thank and commend you guys when discussing games and not using any form of scoring or rating. It adds much more depth to a conversation and isn't undermined by a 5.2 or a 6.4. Not to name names, last week I saw another game news company tweet about their new patented 5-point scale like it was an infomercial from Better Call Saul, a company that has expanded to the point that I feel like it's kind of lost its identity in recent years. Do you feel like them having a scoring system is to convey a sense of uniformity with such a large team, or is it something deeper? People are talking about Kind of Funny, my old company here, and it's interesting because it has created this, not even about them, but just about this conversation about scoring and how unusual it is to see a company embrace scoring, and in an era where if anyone's doing anything, people are moving away from scoring. Now, again, the cynic in me, I think, knows why they've chosen to do this, and I don't really blame them. It's smart marketing. It'll probably get them on Metacritic and all that, so that's good. But for me, I can't analyze things through that lens personally. Like it's hard for me to do. I will fully admit that when I was at IGN, I reviewed hundreds of games at IGN. I don't know if I would score any of them the same, even though I think if I went and read the text, I'd be like, yeah, this is exactly the way I felt about the game. I can think of scores that I said this before that I would change, no doubt. There are games that I overscored. There are games that I underscored, because like it's not any other reason than it's the way you interpret the feeling and the word combined with this number, this very unscientific thing in that moment. And then you can even look back at it later and be like, what the fuck was that? Like I underscored the original Wolfenstein Machine Games game. I overscored PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Very rarely do I feel like I really nailed it with like Last of Us 10, of course. But I don't find value in these scores. So it's not so much about what Kind of Funny or others are doing, but more about what is the value in that. Especially a 5-point scale, I find very dubious. But I also found the 100-point scale at IGN insane. And you would notice that with very rare exception, my reviews will always be 0.0 or 0.5, because I'm like, I don't know that I can even tell you what the difference is between a 7.3 and a 7.5. I don't fucking know what the difference is between that. None of us know. And that's what I think maybe Kind of Funny is walking into a trap in a way, because it's like, it seems to me you're going to have to defend what you're saying based on these arbitrary numbers, but no one was asking you to do that probably, or a few people were asking you, it kind of sacrifices the product. I founded that company, or co-founded that company. I know that our mantra at that time was like, we would never do scores. So obviously something has changed, and that's totally fine, but it has brought up this really interesting self-reflection point for a lot of people in the industry that I've been seeing kind of happening about, well, what is the value of scores? Why have scores in this and all and that? So I appreciate they're adopting the score just to, restart the conversation and remind me, no, well, we're not ever doing that. Ever are we going to do that on this show? If the Dukes want to do that one day, that's their show. They can do whatever they want, but I highly doubt that they would do that. So what do you think? Do you have anything to add about this one, Dustin?
Maybe. So as far as kind of funny in their 5-point scale, I think it, from a business perspective, I think I watched Greg's video on Twitter and he mentioned they're not trying to get on Metacritic, but to be a part of review roundups. And that makes sense from a marketing perspective. Like you said, Colin, like I don't blame them for wanting to get that free PR. That makes total sense to me. But I like you said, scoring games on a numeric scale like that, like you said, you can walk into situations and have to defend yourself, and maybe things change and stuff like that. It's not always going to be all positive. But something I think that I just thought of this, Colin. Tell me if I'm out of line. Is you and I both agree that scores, by and large, are stupid. That they
trap you.
They trap you. So, but at the same time, myself included, we care, at least on some level, about what a Metacritic score is. Right. I mean, we have our Metacritic draft. So in some way, we do put value on the numeric scoring of games. But when we're talking about an individual reviewer's opinion, then it's like, okay, well, we shouldn't have scores. So do you think that there's some middle ground for this? Or
yeah, I think, first of all, I think you're absolutely right that there's like a conundrum between our inability as an industry and as a show to ignore those scores and still use it as a tool to say, like, well, this is the assessment of what everyone feels. And as a developer and like an owner of a developer, Metacritic is important because like we have an 80 in Hyroxia 2. That means a lot. That's a huge deal. Have an 8 or higher on Metacritic. And so we understand that matters, but we wish that it didn't. I must say about the Metacritic draft, I did that because the audience wanted it. Like that doesn't indicate to me that I give a shit. I'm trying to predict what the Metacritic score is going to be. I'm not saying it's valuable or not. So I will defend our decision from that perspective. But there is no doubt that we notice what games get, the way they trend and all of that. And that is part of an industry-wide old problem that I think just we need to get away from because scores come from newspapers and magazines. Little movie blurb. You have 30 words, literally 30 words. And then you give it a star, star. So you say, this Tom Cruise film is explosive and dynamic. We especially enjoyed the ending, which got incredibly ethereal, 5 stars or whatever, like that's where that comes from. But when you have infinite time and infinite space to say something, you don't need to encapsulate it in a score. And if people are too lazy to get value out of your content without that, I mean, that's just not what we want. So we're not timely enough with what we do, number one, to matter in that regard. So we don't have to worry about that marketing problem because when we have something to say about Horizon, it's going to be long after everyone else is done talking about it, as we said. And I think that means that people that care about our opinions will come and just listen to them regardless of what we gave it. And when I did do video reviews with Last Stand back in the day, I just didn't score things. And that frustrated some people, but I think most people got it. So it's certainly not a slight against Kind of Funny that they decided to do that. I'm surprised knowing the mentality that the company used to have about scoring, but we don't have a marketing problem, not because the show is big or anything like that, but because it's like, we don't look at that as a problem. We want people to find the show more organically, I think. And putting a score on something will no doubt invite, let's say like Elden Ring comes out, we give it a 9. Horizon comes out, we give it a 9.5 or something like that. Then that's just going to come up forever. Like, what is the point of that? What is even the point of making that a thing? It's not a thing. We're not going to make it a thing. Instead, listen to the podcasts and glean information out of those that way. So whatever. Okay. With that said, let's get into what we're playing. Dustin, you have one game on your list. Talk about it.
Yeah. So as per normal. I usually dabble in a bunch of things throughout the week, but in particular, the things I've been playing are the same things, so I don't have anything new to say about Pokemon or Uncharted. I do have new things to say about Sifu, though. And I am feeling a bit mixed on this game right now, in that I'm at the point where I need to decide if I'm willing to dedicate myself to the hardships and the frustrations in order to beat this game. And so this has been something that's been floating around in my mind the last few days, with Horizon and Elden Ring on the coming very soon, that I don't know if I enjoy the combat of Sifu enough to suffer through it. And I say suffering in a, like, it's very difficult. Like, you're playing a game, it's fun, right? But it's made me think a lot about these really difficult games that I really enjoy. You think, we just did that From Software episode that you guys are going to hear pretty soon. I've tried to figure out, like, what qualities about this difficult game encourage me to keep going, whereas the qualities of this difficult game don't encourage me to keep going. And I don't know if I necessarily have that fully figured out with Sifu yet. I think that it's partially on me that I just don't have certain mechanics of the game quite mastered yet. For example, the part that I'm stuck on right now, which I haven't put in an incredible amount of time in the past week. We've been really busy with doing this live show and trying to get merch set up. So my gaming has been kind of light, but once Horizon comes out, I'm going to probably spend every moment that I'm not working playing that. So I'm stuck at this part at the end of level 2 with this boss. And the key mechanic that I need to master is this ability to duck or to jump at his attacks. And I can't seem to get it. So I've just been thinking about, like, do I want to do Returnal this and be like, I have to beat this? Or is this the point where I cut, break clean from it and say, well, I've enjoyed my time with this game and I think I'm ready to move on. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it, but it's just maybe not necessarily what I'm looking for. But overall, Sifu, just to reiterate on some of the stuff I said last week, I very, very much want to emphasize its unique qualities of being a roguelike in a way, with its progression, its aging system. There's so many ideas that just get used over and over again with very little variation. And so I think it's important to praise something that is an entirely new take. Roguelikes, obviously huge, right? Difficult. The how you progress in these difficult games, is an important factor of them. And so I just, Sifu's the aging system. It's like it's its coolest factor, and it's also the thing that is makes it so incredibly difficult. It's like I think I mentioned last week, you age and then you age exponentially, and then so it's just like it really can crush you. But overall, for what I wanted to say with this game is that if you like beat 'em up games in particular, this has a lot of that. It has a lot of fighting game elements, which is part of the reason I think I'm not as good at it. Not that it has like combos of like square, triangle, up. But it does have combos where it's like you press up twice and then your power attack, and then you have different ways of blocking. It has a fighting game feel to it. So if you like those elements, and in particular Sekiro fans, it has a very similar poise system where you can only block so many attacks before you're knocked down. If you like a lot of those elements, you absolutely should check this game out. No doubt. But it will crush you. And I don't know. This one may call back to me at some point in the next year or so. If maybe I'm in between games, but I think I'm going to put it down for now.
Yeah, I've been sufficiently scared away from just reading some of what people have to say about it. Josh Kiskall actually wrote into us about the difficulty. He says, "Hey guys, I am playing through Sifu, which I must say is one of the better design games I have played. The first 4 hours were difficult and spent dying as I learned the game's systems and enemy design. My question is, how is that different from most other things in life? From sports like football and baseball to broader things such as writing and learning an instrument, most things are difficult until you practice and get good at them. Does adding difficulty options in games that don't have them make the game accessible to more people, or is it just allowing more people to shortcut the work needed to get good at something? Thanks and keep on rocking." Yeah, I think this is interesting. Sifu, Slowclap, the developer, is releasing a patch, or has already released a patch, maybe with a new difficulty option, which turns a lot of people off. And I don't think this is a matter of accessibility. I think I've made this argument in the past that I just think that we have to understand that games are not for everybody, and not every game is for everybody. So when I found out that Sifu was very difficult, my first instinct was not to ask or want for something easier, but to say, like, this is just not for me. And I just feel like I'm not going to have the patience or the wherewithal. I really only subject myself to brutal 2D games. I'm not very good at 3D games in comparison, and I don't want to challenge myself to that extent. And so I've been sufficiently, scared off from this game. And I think it's for the best, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that in the position of Slowclap, if they felt like this is something that they wanted to release an easier difficulty and a harder difficulty as well, then I support them in doing that. They want to make their game more accessible to more people. Awesome. Adding in that difficulty, those different difficulty modes, is going to do that. The frustration with the difficulty conversation that keeps coming up and will surely be back next week with Elden Ring, or within the next week or two, is the demand of these developers to do that. And that's where I draw the line, is that it's like, if From Software doesn't want to do an easy mode, then sorry. That's how they intended and designed the game. Like you said, not every game is for everyone. Not every game is for me or you. And so if From Software decides they do want to release an easy mode, cool. I'd be a little concerned about it maybe compromising aspects of the design, but that's not for me to decide. That's for them as the developer. So I will support them in making that decision, whether it's one I would like or not. But so yeah, I'm curious about the easier mode, if it would diminish the experience in Sifu, but it's cool that option is there for people that want it.
As far as I'm concerned, I've played 4 games in the last week to talk about. Far Cry 6, I finally went back and platinumed, just spent the time with it to do that. That's platinum number 126. I don't think this game will really come up anymore, but I just want to just give it a parting shout out, because it is so fucking good. It is just so good. I love Far Cry 6. I think it's awesome. And then Doki Doki Literature Club, I finally went back to and platinumed that. That's platinum number 127. I have to give a shout out to, it was like True Achievements, or one of these websites had a walkthrough where you had to beat the game 6 times in a very specific way in a row, like in different ways, to unlock everything. And though I didn't need to do all of that, because I had like 89% of what I needed unlocked naturally, I just played the game through 6 times one morning in like 3 or 4 hours, and just finally just got that out of the way. I started Hades, and I played it for, I don't know, an hour and a half maybe. It's really good. I don't think I'm going to play it right this second, but I am glad that I got a little bit of a taste for what it is, and I understand it now, and so I understand the appeal to it. And what I really enjoyed about the brief time I played with it is just, I liked Returnal, but it's not the kind of game I want to play very often, where it's like, you're not really doing anything to increase your odds of getting through this. You're just going to need to brute force your way through this game. You got to get better at the game, like straight up. And there are little things you could figure out along the way, and I did, and I got really proficient at Returnal, but that game beat the shit out of me. And I feel like the difference with Hades is that you can tell that this is just a much more accessible game. I also see this as a natural evolution of Transistor in a way. And playing it, I was like, wow, this kind of feels a little bit like Transistor in some way, and in look and feel, So I'll get back to that as well. But the game I really want to give a shine to is the following game. And Kevin White wrote in and said, "What's up, boys? Just one question for Colin. Have you checked out Infernax yet? This is a Colin-ass game if I've ever seen one, and I am loving it. Thanks, y'all." So I have. Infernax is out. This is a really, really wonderful game. It's on PS4 and other platforms. It came out on Valentine's Day. And it's from a studio I've never heard of, actually, called Berserk Studio. And Infernax is really good. Really, really, really good. And what I think is so special about it is that it's both proficient as a game, but incredibly nostalgic. This game is predicated 100% on Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest. And it became so overbearing that I had to stop and start showing Mike. Like I'd stop the game and go to YouTube and be like, just look at Castlevania 2 and look at the merman enemy and look at the background with the mountains and the weird priest dude. And it's like everything is from this game in Infernax. And it's nice to see a game acknowledge Castlevania 2's importance. Castlevania 2 is really vague and annoying, and I get it. And it even makes fun of that in the game. There's like a scene, there's a thing you have to do in the game where you have to, I won't even ruin it, but there's some really obscure thing you have to do in Castlevania 2 that no one would ever have known to do if you didn't have Nintendo Power. It was like ridiculous. And they have something similar in this game. And it feels like that. And you go to these different boss stages that are the equivalent of the mansions in Castlevania 2's countryside. It's so cool and interesting from that perspective. And Castlevania 2 ended up being really influential on Symphony of the Night, which of course is one of the most influential games of all time. And so it deserves a little bit more shine. And I think Infernax gives it that. But there's a few things about Infernax that are a little different. The one thing it does is it has choices in it, which I think is really cool. For instance, you encounter a dude holding up a priest on a bridge. You can let the guy pay you off to escape, or you can fight and kill him. And that might have ramifications later. And the ramifications, I think, of that decision are, if you go back to that bridge later, that guy has something to sell you if you let him go or something. And so you make all of these different choices. And apparently there's like a good ending, a very good ending, a bad ending, a really bad ending, which again is a ode to Castlevania 2, which had 3 different endings, depending on what you did in the game and how quickly you did it. And so I think that a lot of people are going to play this not knowing the references, but for people that are familiar with Simon's Quest, it will beat you over the head. And I love it. I think it's such a wonderful game, and I'm really having a good time with it. And it fit in that pocket perfectly between, waiting for Horizon, and now Horizon's going to arrive. When Horizon's over, I think, Dying Light will be in a much more playable state. And so these other things will fall by the wayside. But yeah, Infernax is dope. I highly recommend it if you're into old school games like I am. Someone had referenced it to me, I think on Discord or somewhere, saying that it's got a Shovel Knight quality to it, and it does, and in the sense that it's very high quality and wears its many influences on its sleeve, but is something also that is modern and feels right and feels good to play. It's hard as fuck too.
I love that this game has a warning when you boot it up. That it's like, this game is very violent. It is not for children. And man, this game, really awesome pixel art that is just brutal. They take it up a notch. And so I very much appreciated the very little bit I played. I think I played like maybe half hour.
I think it's on Game Pass.
Morning. Yeah, it is. That's how I played it.
Yeah. All right. So that's all we got there. Let's get into the news. By the way, I'm sorry if anyone, I don't know if you hear it. I don't know if it's coming through, but people are working in my yard, so it might be noisy. I don't know. Number 1. On the eve of Horizon Forbidden West, we learned some huge news. The original Horizon has surpassed a staggering 20 million copies sold. Word comes by way of Sony-centric sources, including Herman Hulst, former director of Guerrilla Games and current head of all PlayStation studios, who tweeted out the number. These numbers account for both the PlayStation 4 and PC iterations and only include copies explicitly sold and not downloaded for free as part of PlayStation Plus. And it's simply more proof as to why Sony is doubling down on Horizon. The sequel Forbidden West will be on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 by the time you hear this podcast, but it's not the only Horizon game en route. A PlayStation VR 2 exclusive game called Call of the Mountain is also in development, this one at Sony-owned British studio Firesprite. In further celebration of Horizon, Sony and LEGO have revealed that a 1,200 plus brick LEGO tall neck is coming to stores in May and will stand more than a foot tall once assembled. Sony has also revealed its Play and Plant program in conjunction with Forbidden West. Sony will plant a tree in conjunction with the Arbor Day Foundation for anyone who earns the Reach the Daunt trophy in either the PS4 or PS5 versions of the game by March 25th. Horizon, which is shepherded by Sony-owned Netherlands-based Team Guerrilla, launched the first Horizon on PS4 in early 2017. It was previously known for its work in the Killzone FPS franchise, spanning PS2, PSP, PS3, and PS4. All right, let's start with these Horizon sales numbers. What do you think? 20 million sold. 20 million. It's a lot of copies. Now, obviously not all $60. We're going to talk a little bit about a game that seems to have done even better than Horizon. But this is an incredible feat for a brand that was selling no games at 20 million units. And in 5 years, they've managed to get this one across the line with the help of PC. How do you feel about those numbers?
I think it's great, especially thinking about it being a new IP as well, and just such a big success story for Guerrilla as a team. I remember just before this game came out, and I actually got to play it a little bit at PlayStation Experience that year as well. And just feeling so intrigued by it just from its freshness overall. It's unique idea. We have so many post-apocalyptic games, and so to get one that is completely different is really cool. This idea of this is a post apocalypse where it's people don't even have any memory of the old world, and they only see it through what's some of this stuff that's left behind, and also just like these awesome robot dinosaurs. I know, didn't they say they're not robot dinosaurs? It's like, yeah, they are.
They are robot
and it's
dinosaurs.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. They're awesome.
So congrats to them. Obviously, I think Forbidden West is going to just be absolutely massive this week. It's going to be huge. And it's one of those things where, you and I haven't played it yet, but and I haven't watched or read any reviews, but it's impossible to see just the glowing reactions on Twitter from various games media people. And so even as I've tried to avoid it, it's clear that this game is something special. So I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to it. And I think Guerrilla, Sony bought Guerrilla more than 15 years ago. It's not a new acquisition, but that studio, I think, has paid dividends in a way that they didn't anticipate, because I think with Guerrilla, their intent originally in signing with Guerrilla used to be known as Lost Boys, and they did a bunch of obscure handheld games, but they made I think it was an IDOS published shooter called Shell Shock, and at that point Sony signed on with them to make Killzone, and the first Killzone game for PlayStation 2 was made when Guerrilla was outside the first party. That was a second party game, and then during Killzone 2's very protracted development, very eagerly anticipated development, because that game was huge on PlayStation 3, one of the first big games on the console, they acquired them in there. But I think Killzone kind of petered out, and in some way you can imagine a reality in which Shadowfall came out, did what it did on PS4 in 2013, and then Horizon doesn't work, and that's the end of Guerrilla, I think. And instead, this has given them life and movement. I think it's allowed this idea to percolate of Killzone surviving and coming back. And moreover, I think it's given Sony an even exponentially more important IP, arguably their third or fourth most important IP, which is really incredible when you think about it, when you consider Uncharted and The Last of Us, and even if you want to put Spider-Man in there, God of War. But it's a big one. And so what I'm most intrigued by is not only Forbidden West, but then what Firesprite does with that Call of the Mountain game and how good that is, and if that's available at launch, and what kind of game that is. And if they're going to try to stretch more and more out of Horizon, I imagine we'll get a third game one day. But what are they going to do to Horizon is what I'm interested in now as well. As we wait for the second game to play it, I'm intrigued by what the end will be. Will they treat it with a little care, or are they going to run it into the ground? Are they even going to have the ability to run it into the ground, because it takes so long to make these games? This game took 5 years, which is not a very long time, but it was built on the architecture of the old game. I mean, it's the same engine, and Decima, it was made on the same hardware. They didn't have to overcome a lot of the same challenges that they did when they went to first person to third person, when they went from shooter to action. So I think there's a lot of really exciting potential, and I'm amped up about that. And I don't know if it will pan out or not, but we'll see. The other thing I wanted to bring up here is the Lego set. So
yeah,
what do you think about this tall neck Lego? Now, this is a real thing. Of course, we got caught in the snare a few weeks ago in the Lego world of the fake rumor with the Uncharted thing, which we talked about then. But this is real. It's a Lego tall neck, more than 1,000 pieces. It looks pretty neat. Are you going to pick this thing up?
You know, Colin, I kind of have been down on Legos since I started to get into model kit building, but I'll tell you, this one intrigues me and looks really, really cool. And, you know, it's $80, which Legos are just expensive overall. It feels a little high, but man, there's a lot of nice details in it. Like they got the little walker guy at the bottom as well. Have Aloy, and I think that I'm trying to remember the trailer. Does it have some kind of light up component if you put Aloy on the top?
I don't know.
Let's see, Lego Horizon. I swear there was like some extra thing. Now, I will say overall, Lego has been really killing it with these licensed things that they do. Okay, it doesn't have any like electronics. That was just a dramatization for the trailer, but it looks cool nonetheless. But the Lego Seinfeld set, Ben was telling me about that he just built it recently, and he's like, yeah, it was awesome. There's so many small details for fans of the show in that. And this is a Lego I would be proud to display in my home. So I think I will get it, most likely.
Nice. I don't think I will because I don't know. I mean, I have plenty of room, but I have too many things. I just don't need more things in my life. I like Horizon. I love Horizon, but I'm not that passionate about it where I need to have a tall neck in my life. I might get it for my nephew, though. We'll see. I also wanted to acknowledge the tree thing. Wet Willie wrote in and said, top of the muffin to you. Wanted to give Sony some kudos for their initiative to plant up to 288,000 trees in the U.S. for players who pop the Reach the Daunt trophy in Horizon Forbidden West. It also appears they have a similar program in other geographic regions for the same trophy. Upon looking into the details, it seems like mostly a PR move in terms of how it's being presented, but it's still something that Sony did not have to do. Here's to hoping that the signal is the start of a continued real-life benefit to trophy hunting. Sony PR, if you're listening, and we all know you are, please continue this type of initiative in other games moving forward. Yeah, so nothing happens in the corporate world for straightforward reasons. I always make fun of, and I think I've done on the show, hotels when it's like they put the little card on the table and it's like, unless this card is on the bed, we will not wash your sheets because we want to be a green company. It's like, no, you want to not wash the sheets because it's more work and you have to spend the money and the labor and all that. But it's good for the environment. And so that's your spin. With this, Sony is no doubt getting a nice, tidy write-off for their philanthropy. And that's good for their bottom line. And they're always going to seek ways to give away money. Every major corporation does because it's good to give away money when you have a lot of it. But that's okay because the benefit is still real. 288,000 trees in the United States planted because of this game, potentially. And surely that will happen because the game's going to sell millions of copies. I just wanted to give a shout out to this. I thought this was a really cool idea. I'm actually a big fan of the Arbor Day Foundation. I'm a huge fan I love trees. Like I love trees. I think they're awesome. Like I just love trees, especially the cedar tree. That's my favorite tree. And we need more. I was listening to a Joe Rogan episode recently with a global warming scientist, climate change scientist. And he was saying that the earth is getting greener and greener as we have more and more carbon in the atmosphere and how that's good. It gives us better crop yields and more of this. So I think to mitigate global warming or the effects of climate change that are man-made as well, planting trees is a wonderful way to make that happen. Sorry, I was looking at my phone, so I don't know. It probably won't come through, but they're building the concrete around my pool.
Okay. So there's progress on the pool.
Yeah, and so I'm just very carefully watching what they're doing. That's all.
Okay. Just gotta make sure they're not no funny business while they're.
It's exciting. This actually wasn't supposed to happen until tomorrow, and it's happening now. So, but we'll take it because they're so late. Anyway,
definitely.
Okay, so shout out to Sony PR for the Arbor Day thing. Shout out to Lego for the tall neck. Shout out to Gorilla for the wonderful success of Horizon. We cannot wait to play the sequel on PlayStation 5, having bought it on PlayStation 4. So thank you for that. Number 2, and I told you this was going to be a little bit of a celebratory episode for Sony. Number 2, the numbers are in for software and hardware sales for the month of January 2022 in the United States, and they are great for Sony. PlayStation 5 outsold both Xbox Series X and S and Nintendo Switch for the month. This includes both units sold and total money made. This represents a return to form for PS5 following the tumultuous and competitive months that saw Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony all switching places. When it comes to software, it should come as no surprise that Pokemon Legends, what is this, Arceus? Is that how you say it? Or Arceus?
I believe it's Arceus, but I've heard it both ways.
Was the month's best-selling game, made all the more extraordinary by the fact that it took the top spot without counting any digital sales. I want to repeat that. That Arceus or Arceus game is the best-selling game in the United States against all other games, only counting physical games sold. That's actually pretty amazing. Other notable games include Call of Duty Vanguard at 2, God of War at 5, Miles Morales at 6, Rainbow Six Extraction at 9, Battlefield 2042 at 10, and Far Cry 6 at 12. When broken down by platform, PS4's and PS5's best-selling games in the US for the month were in order: Call of Duty Vanguard, Miles Morales, Madden NFL 22, FIFA 22, Rainbow Six Extraction, Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man, Battlefield 2042, NBA 2K22, and Far Cry 6. Now, you might notice a game is missing there. So analysis of the numbers indicates that God of War's very strong showing in the United States was aided by, you guessed it, a very well-received launch on Steam. And there you have it. You know, even though it was out of the top 10 PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games, it was still the 5th best-selling game of the month in the United States overall because of that Steam release. That's why you put the games on PC. So congratulations to them. Any standouts there for you? I think Extraction seems to be doing decently considering it was on Game Pass. It's creeping.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. You know, at 9, it's pretty good for, like you said, on Game Pass for both PC and Xbox. I'm pretty sure, and also I'm pretty sure that game is not very good. It's not. It seems to me.
I gotta admit, I almost bought it because I was like, I just had this itch a few weeks ago where I was like, man, I want to play a shooter, you know. But I stopped myself. I'm like, I don't need this game. This game has PlayStation Plus written all over it.
Yes, it does, definitely.
Otherwise, no. Congratulations, though, to God of War. I mean, resurging. We'll see how long that sticks around on the MPD. I'll be tracking that. All right, more good news. Number 3, Insomniac's Spider-Man spinoff, Miles Morales, is incredibly popular. In fact, after only 14 months on the market, it is already the PlayStation brand's 3rd best-selling exclusive game of all time across all PlayStation platforms, dating back to 1994. This is unbelievable data from the MPD group, which tracks American sales data. And what makes this number even crazier is that it's not total units sold, but in money grossed. You'll recall that Miles Morales actually sells for $10 less than a standard PlayStation 4 game, meaning it must have sold even more units to make that much money. Launched on PlayStation 5 as a launch game in the fall of 2020, Miles Morales also came to PS4. The only 2 better-selling games for PlayStation exclusives, other than Miles Morales, came in the form of 2018 Spider-Man, from which Miles Morales spawned, and Santa Monica Studios' 2018 reimagined God of War. Insomniac, purchased by Sony in 2019 following Spider-Man's launch, was acquired for the cut rate of $229 million, a small fraction of what Sony later went on to spend for Bungie just weeks ago. Dude, Miles Morales is murdering. And they're not being explicit with copies sold, which is fine, because they're being explicit that it's money's made. And it's a budget game. And it's the 3rd best-selling PlayStation exclusive ever. What do you think of that?
I think it just goes to show, first of all, that some of what Sean Layden was saying before he was ousted or left or whatever happened with him is true. That we don't necessarily need a whole remade new sequel every 6 or 7 years. That there's possibilities for these interstitial titles. And Miles Morales, man, I think that game was awesome, and it was also just it was good for Sony that not only was this game already so popular, but then you have Spider-Man, the new movie, No Way Home, right?
Yep.
Now, I don't know if it is officially yet, but it was like possibility of going to be like the biggest box office ever, or very close, in the top 5, maybe top 3. So you have that crossover also of people that are excited about Spider-Man just across the board. And so that's going to encourage them and have more people go out and buy the game. And it's awesome because the game is good. Sometimes games sell because of the brand being popular somewhere else and it's not good. And it's like, well, it's just selling because it has the brand attached to it, right? It's Spider-Man. But in this case, the game is also pretty dang good. So overall, it's good to see. It's Spider-Man's interesting. People really, really love that character. I feel like people have the most close attachments to Spider-Man and probably Batman, I would assume, are the two biggest
Batman's dope.
superhero characters.
Definitely. It was it's interesting to go back and even imagine a time when Marvel was in trouble, but it was true.
Yeah.
And that these deals go all the way back to that point in time. And that Sony, unlike Paramount and I think others, and even Sony itself with some other properties, ended up relinquishing some of those rights because they weren't exercised. They remade Spider-Man after the Tobey Maguire ones to keep the license. That's what happened. And it ended up being incredible for them. Like, just crazy. You're right. It's unbelievable, really. And I think the bigger thing to this point, I think, Dustin, is just Insomniac for $229 million was the fucking steal of the century. That is a billions of dollars company now. That is maybe the most important studio Sony owns. That has certainly come in late in the PS4 era and early in the PS5 era to basically drag a lot of the first party content through. Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Ratchet and Clank. And people are like, "Oh, organic, organic. What's organic about Nix's? You want to talk about organic? Insomniac. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it brought out the best of both parties. It brought out the best of the IP. The only person who lost is Ted Price, who could be a billionaire right now. But I'm sure he's happy with his hundreds of millions. And it's a marriage made in heaven for PlayStation. Spider-Man plus first party plus Insomniac plus PlayStation exclusive has been formidable. Sorry, you were about to say something.
No, so this is, I mean, related to what we're talking about, but not to what you were just saying. You were talking about how they remade Spider-Man to try to keep the rights.
Right.
It awoken this memory in my head, and I found evidence. In 2014, there was rumors that Sony was developing an Aunt May Spider-Man spin-off movie. Like, just doing whatever they can. Like, we got to keep this. But I think that was around the time, the Spider-Man timeline, not necessarily fresh in my mind. I'm trying to remember when the Andrew Garfield ones were kind of tapering off, and so they were trying to figure out what to do. This is before they got into bed with Disney and the Marvel MCU Spider-Man movies, which I don't even really know how they worked out that deal. But they were, I don't know, maybe this rumor isn't true, but it's funny to think about either way that they were thinking about. This is from Collider. It would be an espionage film and focus on a young Aunt May. Wow.
That's so dumb, because she's kind of incidental, isn't she? Like, I mean, she's an important character, but as of the time Spider-Man becomes Spider-Man, she has nothing to do with anything before that, right? She's not like a fucking superhero or something.
No. So not to my knowledge.
God, that's so corny, man. It's good. It benefited. Remember, Marvel didn't have control of this. It was Sony that gave Marvel access again. Like, everyone can be together again, right? I think that started with like Civil War or something. And I think that was good for Sony, because it got, like, now Marvel can kind of worry about, let us do the storytelling. Let us kind of massage this. You guys control the rights. You're going to make all that money. You got your studio working on not only Spider-Man, but Wolverine, and probably more. I mean, I would not be surprised if there was another Marvel game somewhere in the studio's family. I don't know how much you want, but why not? I mean, the only thing that would be interesting, although I don't know if Sony would do it. What do you think of this? Like a DC game. It seems like something that obviously WB does on its own. It's all third party, and maybe they'll be purchased one day. Obviously, AT&T was very interested. Warner was very interested in spinning those studios off, but it just never happened. But I don't know if they would bite the hand that fed it, and you could see DC falling in with Xbox. In fact, I'm surprised that didn't just happen, right? Like, fine. If that's what you want, we will go and get our guys. And I would argue that would be even more formidable, because I think the only game that has more potential, to your point about what is more popular, is Batman. I mean, if you did a Batman game that was truly great, even better than Asylum,
right?
I think people would buy into 20 million units. So it's interesting, that kind of whole dynamic, this outside licensing and how important that is, because Spider-Man is really intrinsically linked now with PlayStation. It's not going anywhere, and I think that would be the last game you would see on Xbox out of the first party, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. DC is weird in that they kind of really ebb and flow on whether they have a positive feeling from the consumers overall. From what I can tell, it's like they have to reboot every like few years, it feels like. And like we're getting another Batman reboot pretty soon, which it looks fine.
Good.
It looks
I also
cool.
heard that the sequel may get Mr. Freeze, which is what I've always wanted in one of those series Batman movies.
Yeah. And now, like right now, Peacemaker is really popular on HBO. So who knows? You have to imagine that Phil Spencer would be looking at that and be like, yeah, we want our Spider-Man game.
We'll see.
Hard to say.
I think WB is very happy keeping everything multi-platform, but money does talk.
It's true.
Number 4, in a surprise twist, Cyberpunk 2077 has come to PlayStation 5 with a long-promised native release toting a ton of updates. As you'll no doubt recall, Cyberpunk 2077 was such a disaster on PlayStation 4 when it came to the platform in late 2020 that Sony stripped it off of the PSN for some 6 months while developer CD Projekt fixed the game. It remained on competitor storefronts during that time. Thus, many PlayStation gamers have been waiting for the next-gen port, and it's now here. Most importantly, the port has 2 modes, performance and ray tracing. Performance allows for 4K resolution at 60 frames, while ray tracing allows for 4K resolution at 30 frames with ray tracing. Naturally, both options take ample advantage of the console's SSD for quick loading. DualSense is engaged with all sorts of haptics, and a ton of fixes come with the game, also made available for the PS4 version from a patch list so long that it will take you a very long time to read it. This is all good news, as Cyberpunk 2077 was in disastrous shape from many perspectives, from AI and animation to quest and UI, and to perhaps buy some goodwill from a skeptical audience, a free trial for the game will give any interested player 5 hours of access before you decide if you want to pay to keep going. Recall also that the game has promised DLC in development, though the timeline for that content is far behind schedule due to the many necessary fixes made over the last 1+ year. CD Projekt, the Polish team behind the game, was previously best known for 2015's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which itself is coming to PlayStation 5 with a native port later in 2022. David Hall wrote in, said, "Greetings, gentlemen. CDPR recently announced and subsequently released their next-gen upgrades for Cyberpunk 2077. Whilst the presentation was incredibly sloppy in my eyes, they do seem to have made some worthwhile and much-needed improvements. Colin, I know you said you were waiting for this update to play it. Is this something you still plan to do? And do you guys, like me, question the timing of this announcement, with it being so close to the Limelight Stealers' Horizon and Elden Ring? Stay well, and all the best." It's funny because you're not the only person to write in about this. John also wrote in with a similar conspiracy theory that we were going to read as well. But first of all, I want to say that no, I don't think that has anything to do with anything. Sony there's a PlayStation blog post about it. The demo is on PSN. They obviously knew about this. I don't think Sony cares. I don't think this game is going to do anything to Horizon or Elden Ring, so I don't think it really matters from that perspective. But the news was unexpected, and it leaked a little bit early, so it wasn't a huge surprise when they actually announced it, unfortunately for them. What do you make of Cyberpunk 2077 finally coming to PlayStation 5 and what seems to be an appropriately playable format for the very first time on PlayStation?
Yeah, this is exciting. I think Chris mainly was was I even on this show when Cyberpunk came out? I don't think so.
No, you weren't.
My experience
that was December 2019, right?
19.
No, 2020. December 2020. December 2020.
Yeah. Okay. But either way, my experience was on PC, which was buggy, but nowhere quite to the standard PS4, Xbox One performance at all. So this game, I always felt was actually pretty good as far as like what the game itself on proper hardware was good. It suffered from marketing, promising things and making it appear like something that it's not, which is definitely a big issue. But I feel like if you just take Cyberpunk for what it is, it's actually pretty awesome game, particularly the world. Night City is such an interesting city to even just like drive around and look at. Is really, really cool. So I'm glad that it's now in a state that is, from my understanding, acceptable on these next gen consoles. And apparently, if you played the PS4 version on PS5, it was actually decent still buggy, but it didn't have the major performance, like 15 FPS issues. So it's good to see that it's out there. I think it's awesome that they're doing a demo. It's really smart move, with people rightfully being probably very skeptical of this game, no doubt. And then lastly, as far as this conspiracy, here's what's happening is that they've got a DLC planned probably in about 3-4 months from now. And they know they can't launch it alongside the next gen version because they got to win people back. They got to say, hey, the game is acceptable now. So they got to give people time with it before they ask people for money. So I would expect a Cyberpunk DLC this summer.
Yeah, we'll see. And you brought up the demo. Andrew Griffin wrote in and said, fellas, well, and he said LTFT. I was wondering what this means. It means long time, first time. I had to sit there and look at it. Whatever happened to demos? Why don't we really see them anymore? Remember the days of the PlayStation Underground magazine discs? Surely some attempts have been made to modernize demos with free-to-play, limited trials, beta tests. But why are we not seeing them more often? I agree. I mean, this is something that they've played around with for a long time on PSN here and there, but it's never been turned on to the extent that I think that they intended to. I could have sworn that when PS4 was announced that they said that every game would have a demo. Like, I could have sworn that was something like that was kind of said and forgotten. Could be wrong, though. But it goes into what I've been saying about Steam and others where, especially Steam, though, where Sony just needs to focus on making an ecosystem wherein everyone plays by the same rules. You have the same kind of page where you can have forums and posts, blog posts, and stuff from the developer and updates and all the rest and communication and guides, but also this idea of trying a game. And it doesn't have to be for the same amount of time, but I think it would be cool for, as part, when you get the SDK, you start getting your games over, part of interacting with the final legs of it with PSN and getting your game up and publishing it should be like, how long can your game be played for free? And it should just be a toggle. And maybe it's no more than 5 hours. But if you release a game like Two Thirds Home or whatever that game is that I used to like on Vita, that's like 20 minutes long. It's like, well, we don't want our game played for that long. Maybe we want our game played for 10 minutes, or maybe we're the rare version where we just don't have that. But for most games, I think they can accommodate in half an hour or an hour pretty well. And I think it would do a lot to sell copies of the game, of any game.
Yeah, I think that this makes total sense. For me, in particular, on Steam, there's games that I bought and then I played for about an hour and decided, I don't think I really like this. And so I just asked for the refund. And Steam has been awesome. They've never denied refunds or done any, ask questions or whatever. And even if it was, even that, while it's not as ideal as like an integrated demo situation, that would at least be a step in the right direction. Right now, getting a refund from Sony if a game doesn't meet your expectations for whatever reason, whether it's technical or you just simply don't like it, I'm pretty sure that they're like a all sales final in most situations. You can't just get a refund for something. So I know that they have done refunds for, like, Cyberpunk is a game that they gave out refunds. And if you can sometimes point to specific things, they may do that. But overall, it's not built into their policy about like, hey, if you try this game and you don't like it, you can get money back. That just seems to be, would be a pro consumer move overall to do that. I get it. There's people that will abuse the system and play for 2 hours and then just use it as a, like a mini rental, but you were never going to make their money anyway. So you might as well just do it. And then
I agree.
Probably get more sales because there's people that don't want to plop down, especially now $70, which I know we've said that we understand and are okay with the price of games going up, but it's still a lot of money. So people want to make sure that what they're buying is something that they actually want and feel confident buying. And what a better way than letting people check it out?
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully they come around on that, though. I'm not confident.
No.
Number 5. As noted last week, it's fairly apparent that celebrated Japanese developer Platinum Games may be in some sort of trouble. After all, they are openly talking about reviving a dead Xbox exclusive project for some reason, and now we've learned that they're open to acquisition as well. Now, being open to acquisition isn't new. Mergers and acquisitions are happening at breakneck speed throughout the industry, but openly talking about desiring that outcome is unusual. As relayed by website Video Games Chronicle, which spoke to the developer's CEO, Atsushi Inaba, the team is completely open to the possibility of getting gobbled up. He told the website in part, quote, "The most important thing for us is to have the freedom to make the game that we want to make. What I hear about the recent acquisitions, I don't think Microsoft is going to start I don't think Microsoft is going to start micromanaging Activision to where they take away all of their freedom. I don't think it's going to be a relationship like that. I think there's going to be a lot of mutual respect there, and I think Activision will be able to continue doing what they do best. That's also what's most important to us at the end of the day, whatever form that takes for us as a company. So I would not turn anything down so long as our freedom is still respected," end quote. In a continuing trend of desperation, the studio has revealed that it's releasing its online action RPG Babylon's Fall earlier than intended. Due out for all audiences on PS4, PS5, and PC on March 3rd, players can begin a new demo starting February 25th and gain 3-day early access starting on February 28th if they buy the digital deluxe edition. Babylon's Fall, published by Square Enix, seems almost certain to fail, having generated virtually no buzz. Platinum Games, once one of the industry's brightest independent studios, is best known for its Bayonetta franchise, which began in 2009, as well as the likes of 2009's Mad World on Wii, 2010's Vanquish on PS3, 2013's The Wonderful 101 on Wii U, and most notably, 2017's smash hit Nier Automata. However, the team has also made a series of bad games and bad business decisions, creating a poor Star Fox title for Nintendo, ill-fated licensed games in the TMNT and Transformers series for Activision, and more. It also notably had its Xbox exclusive, the aforementioned Scalebound, canceled, though as noted earlier, it seems intent on trying to revive it. I wonder why. This Platinum's acting strange. I don't know how anyone could see that otherwise. I'm curious, especially as a fan of Nier and others, what you make of this, because it seems like they're a bad game away from maybe being done, and the writing seems to be on the wall for them, and it's shocking. They've just not done a good job of focusing. They grew too big. They tried to do too many things, and they arguably have more mediocre and bad games than they do good games at this point.
Definitely. And there's something to be said too about some of the games that they currently have in development. Look at Bayonetta 3. How long they've been working on that game since it was announced. It's one of those things where Bayonetta was does Platinum own that IP?
I don't know if it's like Sega published the first one, Nintendo revived it. So my assumption is that the different companies own the publishing rights to them, because Bayonetta 1 did just come to PS4 last year. So,
right.
Right.
So I guess either way, it feels like Bayonetta is a child of Platinum. That is something that they've created and fostered, right? And so you look at how they haven't even been able to really get Bayonetta 3 on track for years, which we finally saw gameplay last year, but
it was announced in 2017.
Yeah. So, and then you look at Scalebound and what happened with that, which apparently was more on the Platinum side than the Microsoft side. I don't really know that. It's just something I've seen on Twitter and stuff like that. But either way, there seems to be major management issues at this company. And so you're right. They definitely sound more desperate, or it's almost like the calm before a storm of how bad Babylon's Fall could potentially be. And this is a game that's a live service game that they have some obligation to continue to support it to the people that do buy it. And that's going to be a money sink. And if there's very few players there, then they're going to be tied up with that. You have to imagine they should support it for at least a year or something. And
yeah, it'll be up to Square Enix, I think, and Square Enix has just gotten wrapped into some of these bad service games. I don't know. I know what they're thinking. They want that money, and they have Final Fantasy 14, which is a good example, and some others, but I don't know. This game has disaster written all over it. I just don't see anyone really excited about it. I'll be very interested to see when it comes out, how it does, how it's received, how it reviews, all the rest. So we'll keep an eye out on that. But Platinum, got a bad feeling about what's going on with you. Number 6, longtime CD Projekt designer and the director of The Witcher 3 and its DLC packs has officially revealed his new studio. The man in question is Konrad Tomaskowicz, and his studio, located in Poland, is called Rebel Wolves. Tomaskowicz, who began working at CD Projekt on the original Witcher project in 2007, on which he was a tester, rose to lead quest designer in 2011's Witcher 2, and then into the director's chair for the ambitious, well-received smash hit third title. He also acted as Cyberpunk 2077's head of production, though he has obviously left since. As he told website GamesIndustry.biz, Rebel Wolves' first game, he hopes, will be quote-unquote the holy grail of computer RPGs. To build the game, he's constructed a team of veterans from CD Projekt and elsewhere, and it seems aimed to help ameliorate issues at that team. In a press release relayed by website Eurogamer, he said in part, quote, "Collectively, we envision Rebel Wolves as a place where experienced game developers can reignite their passion, where they can focus on their craft and pour their love into an amazing, ambitious title. We want to stay small and agile, a place where people know and care for each other," end quote. The team is using Epic's Unreal Engine 5 to build their first title, a quote-unquote dark fantasy game that aims to be the first in a franchise. The team is only a dozen people right now, but aims to be at more than 80 in a year's time, according to an extensive interview on gamesindustry.biz. He says, quote, "We want to recreate the feeling of a pen and paper RPG session, where your options seem limitless, where the world reacts to your choices, where every decision matters," end quote. This is interesting because I feel like there's something here where they're not happy with Cyberpunk or with CD Projekt. That it seems like they're saying so. They specifically say they want this to be a place where you can reignite your love of games, as almost if it was taken away from them. What do you make of this announcement of Rebel Wolves? Do you think anything of it?
Yeah, it definitely feels, I don't know, it's not passive aggressive, but you can't help but read into it like you just did, where it's like, okay, well, what was going on at CD Projekt Red? Just because in particular, CD Projekt Red to me before Witcher 3 came out, I don't want to say it had an underdog feel, but you see there's a famous image of their first E3 or one of their first times at a show, and it's like a cubicle and a laptop where they were showing the first Witcher game. And so it was this like cool story about this small Polish team rising to create this beloved game with Witcher 3. And then of course this just immediate downfall in a lot of ways with Cyberpunk. So something happened, some kind of that level of success changed CD Projekt, and apparently not for the better, at least in the eyes of this new team with Rebel Wolves. My biggest question about this project is just when you say the holy grail of computer RPGs, does that mean we're going to be looking at something like a more of a Divinity Original Sin 2 type of situation, like a top down? He mentions recreating the feeling of pen and paper RPG sessions. That's cool. I don't know if that's something that necessarily appeals to me, and I'm curious about the wider market appeal. I mean, obviously, I guess Baldur's Gate 3 right now, that's still in early access, but that has a ton of hype behind it as well. So maybe there is something there, but I guess I'm just curious on what exactly does it mean by computer RPG? Does it mean CRPG? Because if so,
Count me out.
I don't want to say it's disappointing, but it's not what I would want personally, but that's okay.
Yeah, who knows what who knows what's said in translation and all of that, because there's a few weird things that they say in here, but we'll keep an eye out. Ben Sender did write in though, and he said, "Hey guys, just a comment. With the announcement of Rebel Wolves, a new studio led by the director of Witcher 3, I can't help but feel that one of the worst parts of the acquisition environment is everyone wondering who will buy this new team rather than be excited for their new project. I feel that the acquisitions have begun to suck the excitement out of these announcements." People can speculate all they want, but you have to understand most people have no idea what they're talking about. A lot of these new teams being founded are not exciting from my point of view, because it's like, okay, you exist now. That's not exciting to me that you exist. I want to see a game from you. It's like when that studio, That's No Moon or whatever, was announced with all these veterans from Call of Duty. It's like, who gives a shit? It's cool, but I want to see your game first. So how do you feel about this idea of acquisitions kind of ruining these announcements? To me, I'm rarely excited by the announcement of a new team vaguely, because there's nothing to show yet. There's nothing to see. No, nothing to say.
It's one of those things where you got to have a big PR blast in order to search out for more developers, right? Like they said they want to have 80 people by how long was it they said?
The end of the year.
80 in a year's time. So you got to, it is a big PR thing to be like, yeah, the guy that was the head of Witcher 3 is at a new team. They're looking for more people. It's not necessarily exciting from what kind of game we're going to get, but I understand the reasoning behind it. As far as what Ben writes in with the acquisition talk, is there actually people speculating? about like, oh, who's gonna buy them.
I'm sure there are like on Twitter and stuff, but people are always speculating. They don't know what these are the same people that said like, oh, Bungie, Sony owns Halo. It's like, oh my God. Like, so them speculating on this is meaningless to me. These studios are certainly, I mean, what we don't know about Rebel Wolves is where they're getting their money from. What people are not understanding is that they're already owned by someone. Someone already owns the team. Someone's already funding the team. Now, if the entire idea is to spin it or flip it rather, then that's fine. But I would doubt that would happen before the game was even sold, or first.
Yeah. Well, has there ever been a case of that where an entire team has been sold and bought by a game that's in pre-production? Like, that just seems a little like
maybe like
horse.
Respawn kind of was in there, like where they were founded by EA, but I don't know if they were. I don't know. I don't. If it does happen, I'm sure I can think of something if I think long enough. But I'm not going to sit here and do that. All right, let's get into number 7. Over the last few years, PlayStation has found itself embroiled in some minor yet meaningful controversy over what appears to be over-censoring of games appearing on its platforms. A strange move for an entirely an entity. I'm sorry, widely known for its adult, realistic, and often violent games. The most recent target is the upcoming horror game Martha is Dead, a historical thriller set for launch imminently. The game is developed by a studio called LKA on behalf of a publisher called Wired Productions. According to a posting on its official social media feed, however, the game is in the process of being censored. Here's what the team says in part, quote, Martha is Dead is a narrative adventure recommended for adult audiences only, with play consisting in potentially discomforting scenes and themes that may distress some players. Both Wired Productions and LKA have always been open and honest about Martha is Dead content, with the sensitive depictions in play consistently communicated to the media since the game was announced in 2019. This content is also flagged clearly and repeatedly within the game itself before play begins. It is with regret that we have had to modify the experience on PS5 and PS4, with some elements no longer playable. After over 4 years of passion and hard work, developer LKA now requires extra time to make these unplanned changes, end quote. As such, the game will still launch digitally on February 24th as planned, but the physical release will be delayed. Most importantly, however, quote, the PC and Xbox versions of Martha is Dead are both unaffected by these developments and will launch with the full, unedited gameplay as planned, end quote. While it's unclear what the mitigating footage or gameplay was, some sleuths think it has something to do with the scene in which a player in first person cuts off a dead corpse's face skin. The game earned an M rating from the ESRB for blood and gore, intense violence, partial nudity, sexual themes, and strong language. Martha is Dead is just the most recent example of a string of weird censorship campaigns by Sony, including the re-release of Catherine, Fairy Tail, Terminator Resistance, and Devil May Cry 5. Kenneth Ohms wrote in and said, hello, my Bishonen. What is going on with Sony's censorship of that indie horror game? It's a mature game for a mature audience, and it's not censored on PC or Xbox. This is starting to make me feel like I shouldn't buy third-party games or indie games on PlayStation. We saw something vaguely similar happen with Devil May Cry, so what's going to be censored next? There's also an article on DualShockers from last year titled Sony's reportedly censoring the violent depictions in games. Is this recent censorship scandal showing off a new content policy by Sony? I find this mysterious. I think a lot of people do, Dustin, just because it seems inconsistent. I watched the footage that is apparently being cut, and it's pretty brutal. But I don't think that it's any more brutal than what Ellie does in The Last of Us or The Last of Us Part 2. It maybe has no context compared to those things, and part of The Last of Us's impact is the violence. That's part of the point. But we can't say that might not be the point in this too. I just, my thing, before I kick it over to you, I will say this. I feel like there is more to why Sony is doing this than we realize. And my theory is that it might have something to do with some sort of internal specification that they have about content, or something that doesn't meet the expectations of an important vendor, or something random like that. Like, it just seems to me to be weird to say, like, we're going to pick on this game. We're going to pick on this game. We're going to pick on this game. And then this game, and this game are fine. It seems to be more targeted, and I can't help but wonder if there's more to it and they just won't say. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. There's something more to this that I don't know if anyone's really gotten to the bottom of. And speaking of bottoms, the Devil May Cry 5 censorship was for an ass in the game that they covered up with a really dumb looking lens flare. And what's funny about that one in particular is that they went back and uncensored it later. So some kind of internal something happened where they were like, oh yeah, actually, you know what? We can have Trish's butt in the game, and it's not a big deal anymore. And it's also like that one was particularly weird because it's like it's not even like it's not intercourse or like a penis or a vagina. Lockmore, right. That one's for you. It was literally like a butt. It's okay. It's not a big deal, but for some reason, that was one of those things that they decided to target for censorship. And it's just such a weird and strange time that Sony is censoring games that I can't remember which game it was, but one of them was not censored on Nintendo Switch, but it was censored on PlayStation. So yeah, Colin, I feel like there is something more going on, and I would love for someone to dig this up somehow. Where is it in the chain where Sony says, nah, because you're right. I don't feel like they're being completely consistent when we look at this Martha is Dead situation and some of the stuff that's been in Sony first party games. It's there's an argument to be made that some of the stuff that's happened is just as bad or whatever. So I will say one of the funny things about this Martha is Dead censorship is that when it initially came out, I saw people saying what the censored thing was, and it totally wasn't true. Did you see that where people were talking about it being a baby stuff? And then I was like, whoa, okay, that actually is pretty crazy.
I saw a scene where like they take like a rock or something and like are cutting this dude's face off. And I was like, all right, that's pretty brutal, but
definitely. It definitely is. Initially I saw some tweets where someone saying it was a baby's face. And I was like, whoa. A baby. You can't rip off any baby faces. Maybe on this show, there's baby sacrifices or whatever.
It's like, remember in in Fallout 3, there was like a colony of kids that you've discovered on a side quest, but you couldn't shoot any of them. Like you couldn't aim or shoot at any of the kids. There's like nothing you can do to them.
Is that a platform thing or is that just a developer thing? It's like, it's probably best. Like Grand Theft Auto, there's no kids in the game, I think, really at all.
For
and that's just like,
it's probably just not. It's probably just exactly to avoid complications.
Yeah.
All right. Number 8, in what can only be described as unexpected news, it appears that Dead Island 2, in development for about a decade, may be on the verge of not only being re-released finally, but also being launched potentially by the end of this very year. Word comes by way of website Video Games Chronicle, which relays a word from the ever-reliable Tom Henderson, the leaker who has given the industry all sorts of scoops, particularly regarding Call of Duty. He even went as far as to describe how the game begins with a zombie outbreak on an airplane, causing it to crash in LA, setting off the game's events. As noted by VGC, Dead Island 2 has been completely tortured. It was revealed all the way back in 2014 at the PlayStation press conference at E3 that year, and has been developed in part by no fewer than 3 lead teams. The first developer, the German team Jaeger, best known at the time for its third-person shooter Spec Ops: The Line, began development of the title in 2012. By 2015, however, Jaeger was off the project and it went to longtime PlayStation partner Sumo Digital. That didn't last either, though. By 2019, the studio behind Homefront: The Revolution, the Deep Silver and THQ Nordic-owned Dambuster, took over, and apparently it's their game we will finally see. You may recall that Dead Island's sequel was complicated by the fact that the original's lead studio, Techland, went on to work on Dying Light in lieu of Dead Island 2, leaving its publisher Deep Silver hanging. Dying Light finally came to PS4 in 2015. Its sequel just launched weeks ago on PS4 and PS5. It's hard to believe that was that long ago. I remember that. I was still at IGN when that game was revealed, which is fucking crazy. That was so long ago. And 3 studios later, I don't believe that this game has any prayer of being good. I would argue Dambuster, I mean, that Homefront Revolution game kind of sucks. And it's a real disappointment because it takes place in Philadelphia. It's a cool idea. But I was like, ugh, this game's really B tier. So I'm not confident in this, but they must be confident enough to pursue it. It's gone through different owners because now THQ Nordic and Embracer are involved. Deep Silver is not its own publisher anymore. Are you looking forward to Dead Island 2?
No, not at all. The first game, I actually honestly couldn't really understand why it hit very much, just because I think I borrowed this from somebody when I was in high school, and I just remember it being so exceptionally buggy and didn't run very well. And so I've never understood the appeal of Dead Island, and now especially because it feels like if there was any magic there with the first one, then it left.
It went to Dying Light.
Yeah, exactly. So I I don't know what this game is holding on to at this point. I guess there's some brand recognition with it being Dead Island, and I know there was some success with the first one, but at this point, just let it go, in my opinion. But I don't know. Hopefully it is worth the wait for people that are excited. But you probably just better off playing Dying Light 2.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't like Dead Island very much. It was cool idea. I mean, it was different when it came out. 10, 12 years ago. It's different now with zombies and open world games and all the rest. Number 9, as they do each month, Sony has revealed PlayStation Network's most downloaded digital games, this time for the month of January 2022. As usual, this data doesn't count physical sales, and for the sake of our list, we're using the American numbers. PS5's top 20 best-selling games for the month on PlayStation Store were as follows in order. Miles Morales, Among Us, NBA 2K22, Madden NFL 22, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, Rainbow Six Extraction, Call of Duty Vanguard, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, FIFA 22, Mortal Kombat 11, Demon's Souls, It Takes Two, Rainbow Six Siege, Ghost of Tsushima, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, Hitman 3, Kenna Bridge of Spirits, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, and Returnal. PS4's top 20 games via the PSN were as follows. Grand Theft Auto 5, Spider-Man, Minecraft, Among Us, Gang Beasts, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, NBA 2K22, Madden NFL 22, Call of Duty Vanguard, Miles Morales, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Forest, Injustice 2, FIFA 22, Five Nights at Freddy's, Horizon Zero Dawn, Dying Light, For Honor, and Star Wars Battlefront 2. On PSVR, the top 10 best-selling games were in order: Beat Saber, Job Simulator, Creed Rise to Glory, Superhot VR, Swordsman VR, Rick and Morty Virtual Reality, Zenith, The Last City, Gorn, Astrobot Rescue Mission, and Drunken Bar Fight. The top 10 free-to-play games across PS4 and PS5 combined were in order: Fortnite, PUBG, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, Call of Duty Warzone, Rec Room, Rocket League, Apex Legends, Genshin Impact, Destiny 2, and Brawlhalla. Nothing to really be said there, I don't think. Number 10, in a sizable move, British games publisher and developer Nacon has acquired Daedalic Entertainment for 53 million euros. This adds to a growing stash of first-party teams under the Nacon brand that numbers some 12 in size, including sports studios Big Ant and Cyanide, racing team Clyoton, and perhaps most notable, Greedfall and Bound by Flame team Spiders. Daedalic, founded in Germany nearly 15 years ago, is mostly known for its adventure games, first on PC and later on console. However, its in-development planned 2022 release The Lord of the Rings Gollum, which Nacon is funding and publishing, is obviously their biggest project yet, and Nacon is impressed enough to put a ring on it. Indeed, Daedalic's relationship with Middle-earth Enterprises, the company that oversees The Lord of the Rings, is probably a major reason why the purchase price was so high, since that level of access and established licensing cannot be overvalued. And this isn't the only silent acquisition to happen this past week. French publisher Focus Entertainment has likewise expanded its first party. The publisher acquired Metal Slug Tactics developer Liker, best known, making it, its fifth team, which includes River City developer Dotemu and Space Hulk team Strumon. So, are you looking forward to this Lord of the Rings Gollum game at all?
It's funny. My friend Brandon actually just brought this up to me earlier this week, and he's like, "What happened to that?" I said, "You know what? That's a good question, because I remember it getting announced, and then finally, I think it was sometime last year, they showed some gameplay. Didn't look too promising. It sits in a weird space where I don't believe this is, so it's not licensed through the movie license. It's licensed through the actual Tolkien estate. So they can't make it, it's not supposed to look like the movie. So it's like somewhere, it sits in this weird space where it doesn't look quite right. And then, oh yeah, this is the game where Chris said that it looked like Tommy Pickles. The Gollum looks like Tommy Pickles. And that just, that kind of put a damper.
Yeah, that's not that there was.
Yeah, not that I was particularly excited about Gollum, but that was a shocking revelation, no doubt.
All right, number 11 is a wrap-up. The official PlayStation blog reports bartending game Star Tenders comes to PSVR on March 17th, while 2D action-adventure game Anno Mutationum comes to PS4 and PS5 on March 17th. Lego fighting game Lego Brawls, revealed in last week's Nintendo Direct for Switch, has been confirmed for release on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, due out early in the summer. Website IGN reports so-called bullet hell FPS Scathe comes to PS4 and PS5 later in 2022. Website Gamatsu reports Rhythm Game, a musical story, comes to PS4 and PS5 on March 2nd. Adventure game Road 96 comes to PS4 and PS5 on April 14th. 16-bit style brawler Final Vendetta comes to PS4 and PS5 at some point in May. An RPG remake, Spellforce 3 Reforced, comes to PS4 and PS5 on June 7th. And finally, NIS's strategy RPG Disgaea 6, which launched on Switch only in 2021, an unusual move for a one-time PlayStation exclusive series, is coming to both PS4 and PS5 this summer. All right. Dustin, as we end every episode of Sacred Symbols, we'll do it with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. Thank you for your love, kindness, and support over there. We could not do it without you. Early ad-free access, the ability to submit these questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, Discord access to the RSS feeds for the early shows, and all the rest. Come join us. Name in the credits, etc. RK128 wrote in and said, "Hello, Sacred Crew. This is a PlayStation podcast, but this is related to something that happened last year. Nintendo is planning a shutdown of the Wii U and 3DS storefronts in March 2023, and unlike what PlayStation did, I don't expect Nintendo to reverse course on their plans. Do you think Sony's Spartacus service is less of an answer to Game Pass and more of them addressing their currently lackluster legacy support? Microsoft just recently ended adding further backwards compatible titles, and with Nintendo's current moves, this could be a major ace in Sony's hand of cards, so to speak. Thank you for the great content." I'm curious what you think about what RK says here, but moreover, a lot of people are really nervous about this Wii U and 3DS news being a harbinger of things to ultimately come for PS3 and Vita, that we kind of got a stay of execution, but that this reminds us that they're still on the clock. I don't know that Sony is going to pull the plug because, as I've discussed on the show and as people behind the scenes have told me, this is a deep 6-figure investment for Sony to keep running. I don't know that it's very expensive for them, and they still have money to make there. But I'm wondering what you think about this Wii U and 3DS storefront closure. It's telegraphed a year ahead of time, what it means for the potential of our revived closures for Vita and PS3. And if you think that Sony's potential ace in the hole is actually the legacy support that they could potentially have that their competitors are kind of eschewing.
Yeah, the Wii U and 3DS thing sucks for sure, which sure you can get your purchases in now. You can still download them once the store is over, but surely that has a time frame as well. And I don't know, Nintendo in particular, I wouldn't feel confident with moves like this. It makes me not ever want to buy anything digital from Nintendo, because at least with Sony and Xbox, we've seen them at least take some initiative over the last few generations to be able to bring stuff with you. Whereas, which to Nintendo's credit, their systems have been very unique that don't necessarily lend themselves to backwards compatibility. As far as like buying a 3DS game and just having it play on Switch, that wouldn't necessarily work. So I get it. But it feels a little soon to me for 3DS in the fact that, what was it, like I'm trying to think of when their last big 3DS push. It was, I guess, probably closer to 2019, 2020. So maybe we are starting to get a little away from those systems, but it feels a little soon to me. And again, this is somewhere where you and I, Colin, differ quite greatly on, but it just sucks that a lot of games that are digital only on those storefronts will be lost if you don't buy them. They'll be only available to those that have purchased them. And then at some point, they'll only be available to people who downloaded them and have them on their systems when inevitably they cut down that service. So that's why I understand the reality. Not every game can be a physical game, but I always will advocate for the option of both physical and digital in order to preserve some of these games that will get lost. Because frankly, what's going to happen with 3DS is piracy after this, is that if you don't give people the option to buy these, some of these digital only games, then they're just will get pirated. As far as Spartacus, let me make sure I'm understanding this question. Do you think Sony's Spartacus service is less of an answer to Game Pass and more of them addressing their current lackluster legacy support? I think that it's more of an answer to Game Pass above everything else, because this is the thing that I've been trying to figure out for years. And I think this is where I want to ask you, Colin, is that we care about legacy titles. We like to go back to these old games. That's something that's important to us, the hardcore, and many of the listeners of this show. But something that I always question is, what is the mass market appeal of that?
Yeah.
Particularly when it comes to, we'll say brands that aren't Nintendo. right? Like, obviously, the NES Classic and the Super Nintendo Classic were huge products that had mass market appeal, and people want to play those old games. Sony, yeah, there's more and more nostalgia around the brand with especially some of these early PS1 titles, but I just don't know if they have that same market potential that old Nintendo games do. And so, yeah, it'll be nice when Spartacus gives us some of those options, but I think when someone signs up, it's going to be for the modern games on it by and large overall. Do you think that that's I'm thinking along the right path here?
Probably. I think they can do both, and I think we just don't the multi-tiered system of what Spartacus will apparently be, I think will allow them to tackle all of these things. Nintendo's kind of already doing that because they have that premium subscription for old games now, which I think people are complaining about for no reason. I think that's fine. It's like, what do you want? I think people just kind of complain for complaint's sake, but I know people are a little bit more afraid of what's going to happen to these games, similar to Vita and PS3 to a much lesser extent, I guess, because it's just so much more prevalent. But what's going to happen to these games as far as their access is concerned, just historically. My argument against the whole piracy thing is that those games will be pirated one way or the other. I don't think that, as I've said before, and I hate to even admit this because I don't want people to go looking for it, although they can do what they want. You're all adults. I certainly would never do it. But I know for a fact, because I've seen screenshots of it or whatever, there's hacked PlayStation Vitas that basically have access to a mirror of the PlayStation Store where there's just no prices, right? Like where you just get whatever you want. And our games are on there. I know that. And it sucks. I think that that's happening right now, even though you don't have to do that to Vita and you could buy Hyroxia 2 and Twin Breaker right now. Some people just don't give a fuck. And I think that that's sad. It's hard for me to castigate them too much because I was one of those people back in the day, not with games to the extent, but certainly with music. I mean, Napster and all of that. I was in 10th grade when Napster came out. I mean, you better believe I was all over that. So we all participated or have participated in these unsavory things, but the bigger question is what they're going to do with archivists and all of that to make sure these games are accessible to some level to someone. And it makes you wonder what the cost of doing business is to just say, like, we'll just make a virtual console that accesses the Wii U store available via Switch or something. Maybe, see, the problem with this, and I know this for a fact, I mean, we all know this, is that these games are kind of out there on their own. Like, it wasn't Switch the first console to really have like a true membership system, right? Are these games attached to the same name are you signing in with the same name on Wii U, 3DS, and Switch?
I don't know the answer to that. I want to say no.
Depending on what the answer is, and I don't write in because I don't want to talk about this again next week, but that there could be something to that where it's like it reminds me of Wii. I spent probably $1,000 or more on virtual console games on the Wii. That they're all on just the Wii that I have somewhere in a closet. That's it. Their argument can be like, we don't want to facilitate the purchase of these games that you can't really access freely anymore, or in more difficult ways with friend codes and all the stupid shit that they do. And so it might be an opportunity for them, should they be a little wiser, to say, like, we're going to bring this stuff over and make a mirror of the Wii U and the 3DS stores on Switch, and you'll have to buy everything again, but they'll be there. That's the best we can do, you know? And I think that would be not great, but maybe the most reasonable expectation. But these companies don't want to make, first of all, these machines are vectors for hacking. They know that. Especially if they're all interconnected. Vita was basically abandoned because it is a vector into the very same PSN, you know, that we use for other machines. So they got rid of that thing. But I don't know. I'm not worried about this with Wii U and 3DS because I think that, like you said, you have a year to buy your stuff. And I don't think you should be relying on older technologies to always be available. I think that expectation really begins, in my opinion, with PS4 and Xbox One and Switch, where it's like, these games I expect will always be available. This version of PlayStation Network will always be available from this point on. Everything before that, I think, needs to be more manual, and that's what makes it so difficult for them. But we'll see. Devin wrote in, said, "Hi, CC and Mr. D. A PSA to all 3G North American Vita owners. AT&T is in the process of shutting down their 3G network in the coming weeks. This is another one of the 1,000 cuts to the Vita. According to Sony's Vita 3G FAQ, quote, play virtually anytime, anywhere, end quote, approach to gaming will change the way that we consume content and compete with friends via the PS Vita. Did any of you use the 3G capabilities of the Vita or have a 3G compatible Vita? I personally have a 3G model and never used it. Remember back when Sony announced AT&T as their network partner and then there were audible boos in the E3 presentation? I'll never forget. I was there in the room and that was surprising because I was like, wow, you never... If anything, audiences at these press conferences are too fanboyish, which maybe is what this was. It's hard to remember that everyone hated AT&T 10 years ago because amongst many other reasons, they locked up the iPhone. Remember that? Like you couldn't get an iPhone unless you had AT&T. Everyone hated them for that. And because their service was bad, but that's not the same company anymore, really. I never used the 3G Vita. We had one at IGN, but I never used it. What I remember, though, kind of being ignorant on technology at the time, and I think Sony played into it because I remember specifically a Call of Duty commercial that suggested this would be possible, was like, wow, I'm going to be able to be on the subway and play Call of Duty with this thing. And they never really dissuaded anyone from that immediately until later. They were like, no, this is for like downloading and uploading trophies. And it's not good enough to do that. But they kind of played with that a little bit. And I think that this is one of those situations that was like, this was a little ahead of its time. And I don't know if it would have ever been successful, but it was certainly like an aborted thing that Sony, they stopped. When they reiterated the Vita a couple of years later, that wasn't even an option anymore. So I don't think, what I would be curious about, Dustin, is if anyone has an active 3G account on their Vita still. That would be fucking awesome. But
I just checked. I was pretty sure, but my Vita, if you're watching the video version here, I've got the 3G SIM card, which I remember now thinking back when I bought it. I want to say that this is just what they had. At some point, I think that they just blended the 3G models into the regular models and they were the same price because people weren't signing up for the service. And that's the thing to me why I'm assuming that if you had to have AT&T as your provider and then you had to pay an additional fee on top in order to have your Vita connect to that service, that would make sense to me. But yeah, it was never something that I would have signed up for. And now it's funny because it's just like something like that is totally useless now with the ability to use your phone as a hotspot. Like you don't need to have devices that have their own cellular in them anymore, which I think Apple might still sell iPads with cellular, but it's like, what's the point? If you got an iPhone, you can just use the hotspot feature. But that legendary moment when they got booed was awesome. I remember, obviously I wasn't there, but I remember when that happened. And yeah, I imagine just being a presenter and like getting booed on stage at that moment. It must have been so incredibly embarrassing.
2011, especially because that was, that's like a big corporate deal. Not that you give a shit about the corporations, but there were people in the boardroom and all that being like, yeah, we made this AT&T deal with Sony and it's gonna be big. And then they that's like their whole thing, like that they're focused on for like 4 months or whatever, like this group of people. And then there's like, boo, and no one uses it. Everyone hates it. It is funny to think about it through that context. Ethan Jimenez wrote in and said, hola, CDC. And Chris isn't here this week, as we said, but so this was somewhat for Chris, but Dustin can answer this too. Last week, Chris made a very good point that Destiny 2 has a very high bar of lore that you need to know in order to fully enjoy the universe, further discouraging Colin to give it a try. With the recent acquisition of Bungie, do you think there's an opportunity for Sony to have most of the game's story retold in a series or movie format? This could be the missing piece for new players of the franchise to keep up with the relevant bits of lore and know what the hell is happening from season to season. Thanks for all your great work and hope you're doing well. Now, we know that the ambition here, primarily with Bungie, is twofold. Number one, to bring their expertise in games as a service in the PlayStation. And then in the other direction, give Sony Pictures heft to Bungie to go multimedia. Now, I think you can answer this effectively enough. I'm surprised that we haven't really discussed this, actually, because in all of the conversation around Bungie, we really haven't discussed, at least on this show, what the potential for them to do with Destiny is. We're focused on the end of Destiny 2 in 2024 and then what's next. But we're not talking about what they're going to do with Destiny. And certainly that's step one, I would assume, for them to be like, yes, before anything else, let's do Destiny and Destiny. I don't know like what it is though. So as a Destiny fan yourself, player, Dustin, what do you think? I mean, what is the multimedia, cross-media potential of Destiny? And do you think that it could be an effective way for them to say, like, this story is rich and robust and science fiction and intriguing and all of this, and let's do it. Let's do it with a big budget and Sony Pictures and all of this. Do you think that we can anticipate something like that? Or do you think it'll be more expansive?
I think that it would be hard to use it as a tool to get people into the game, which I think Ethan here says is an opportunity for Sony to have the most of the game story retold in a series or movie format. That maybe could be possible, but I think that thinking about Destiny's lore, it reminds me more of like a Star Wars or Star Trek, in that, like, I think of like going to Wikipedia. You can find like this character who is never, maybe he has screen time for 3 seconds or something, but yet he has this entire
he has a Wikipedia article the size of Theodore Roosevelt's. Yeah, it's like,
yes, exactly. Yeah. That's with Destiny. There's some of that is definitely in there. I know that I think there's a YouTuber, my name is Bife. I think his complete Destiny lore video is like 6 hours long or something, and I'm sure that it probably glosses over some stuff. So it's one of those things that it's like the world is so expansive that you're never gonna well, maybe if you're super hardcore, you might try to know everything about the Destiny lore, but that's kind of the nice thing, is you don't need to know everything. But I think there is potential of maybe, since Destiny now has this issue where you can't play the beginning of Destiny 2 on Destiny 2. They've removed that content. They've removed older stuff, that maybe they are able to use a series or a movie or something as kind of a gateway into the world for some people, since that introduction is no longer part of the game itself. So maybe there is options for that. I'll definitely say either way, the sky's the limit, whether it's a live action TV show, a live action movie, an animated thing. There's just so many different interesting stories you could tell in Destiny. And so that is one aspect of this deal that I am excited about. It's just that hopefully that opens more doors for them to be able to do this and do it right.
All right. Sorry, Chris. You missed out on your perfect question. You'll never get it again.
Dang it.
Keanu Weebs wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC. Recently became a Patreon member because the content is just too damn good and I didn't want to wait for it to go free. Thank you. Plus, you all deserve it. Thank you again. I listen to a fair number of gaming podcasts, Giant Bomb, Nextlander, 8-4 Play, etc. But Sacred Symbols has fast become my favorite. The structure and the insights are excellent, and even when I disagree, I enjoy the discussion. My question today is, Giant Bomb used to be my favorite for years, but has fallen off recently. One of the primary reasons being very few folks there seem to be actually playing and covering games extensively. Another reason, there are constant jabs at gamers in general. And while we can be a scummy bunch, a lot of us are pretty normal and not always bickering online. We're probably the ones who listen to podcasts. While you do occasionally poke fun at gamers, the questions you get, the way you take them, and the way you point out good questions gives off a sense that you're respectful of the community. How did this come to be? What is a conscious decision? I see almost no other podcast do it this well. Thanks for the content. Keep up the interviews. I can't get enough. Thank you, Keanu, for writing in. I wanted to bring this up because it's something that I actually came up in my conversation with Stacey Henley, who's the editor-in-chief of The Gamer, and people can watch that even on free feeds now on YouTube. But that was on Patreon, a Sacred Symbols Plus episode. And that was a really interesting conversation. And I asked her, as I recall, in part about what I see as an adversarial relationship that many outlets have with their audience or their potential audience. And that seems fucking crazy to me. Like, totally antithetical, a really razor's edge way to run a business. It works, I guess. Like, I think about some people in sports where, like Skip and Shannon, like, you know, Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp, like those guys where they're really all about, you know, getting crazy and saying outlandish things. And it's kind of part of the package, like, you know, always busting balls and being homers for certain teams. And it's kind of part of the production. I think it's kind of like a soap opera, and that's cool if that's what you're into. But for me, I look at podcasting about games as something that is as serious as you want to take it. And I think that our show has a lot of levity and silliness in it, certainly. And that's part of I wouldn't want to do a straight up show. I think that's boring and stupid. I've never done a podcast like that. It's got to be part levity and part fun, but we have to remember that our audience are gamers, and people make fun of that term and maybe it means nothing. And I don't know, because it's like, I'm not a music fan. I'm not a music listener, or I'm not a movie watcher. And it's like, but gaming is newer and more interactive and more and deeper than anything else in terms of entertainment. And it attracts very specific kinds of people, especially those that are deep enough into it to want to listen to a podcast like this. I see no benefit to diminishing people wanting to play games and caring about them and enjoying them. Of course, we make fun of fanboys and corporate cheerleaders and all of that. But at the end of the day, we all come to games for our various reasons. And I think that should be respected. And the idea, like, it's that whole Lee Alexander thing from Gamergate, you know, what she wrote about, you know, gamers are dead is one of the stupidest, most tone deaf things that have ever been written in the games industry. I mean, she is responsible in a lot of ways, as I've described on other podcasts, for Gamergate. And it's like, why do you want to pick at the people who you, and it's no wonder that all of these people, from Lee Alexander to Zoe Quinn to whoever, these people that kind of went down that road of the anti-gamer kind of thing, and they're irrelevant. I mean, how long did you think you were going to stay relevant if you have no audience that you respect and care about and talk to and want to be a part of? See, we're just a voice for an audience, but we're part of the audience. I think that's more true for me than ever as a professional in the games industry, because I don't get codes. We don't have access. I'm waiting for Horizon just like the rest of you. It's fun. It's exciting to be back in that position. I like it. It doesn't feel like there's as much pressure. I feel like I can be a more traditional gamer and an enthusiast. And so if anything, I feel like we're more in line that way. And maybe that's why that sticks out, because a lot of these people become jaded. They're caught. I mean, I was jaded at one time too, so I get it. But I'm still jaded for many reasons, but I was really jaded when I was that kind of funny. But it's like, you get every game for free. You get flown and dined and wined everywhere. Everyone wants to talk to you, and you don't have to really try. And you're up against these embargoes. And by the time everyone's kind of excited about a game, you've already played it for weeks. And I can see that wearing on a person, but we don't have that problem. So I appreciate that shines through. And I think it's just important. Is it conscious? It's conscious in the sense that it's just good to be decent. I mean, I don't know that it's conscious. Like, I'm trying to be like, yeah, I love gamers. It's like, no, I am a gamer. Of course I love gamers. I've been a gamer my whole life. I've been a gamer for 30 plus years. What do you think about what Keanu Weebs has to say, Dustin?
Yeah, well, obviously there's tons of jokes to be made. Like, for example, I had actually a pretty good tweet last week where I said, it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong about Activision Blizzard and Bethesda games going exclusive. In the end, you're a gamer and thus a loser. Which is funny, because there was a few people, that tweet got enough traction that people that have no idea about us or our show saw it and were mad about what I said. I didn't respond to all of them, but one or two, I was like, dude, look at my profile. Like, come on. Like, I'm making fun of myself here. But I think that's his point. Our friend Keanu Weebs writes in, is about this disdain from industry people about the very fans of the content. I know exactly what he's talking about here. And
definitely. It's like, you're too cool for it or something. It's like, who are you?
Yeah, it's like, you're part of this. Like, whether this is what it is. Like, and yeah, no doubt, Colin, we make fun of the quote unquote gamers that deserve it, but there's like, it's such a broad term to just be like, gamers, you know what I mean? Like, to seriously think that is ridiculous. And is it a conscious effort from us? I mean, I don't know. We always just I feel like it's a point for us to just treat the audience with the utmost respect. They're the reason that we're able to do that.
I know.
You know what I mean?
It's totally wild. That's why I'm saying Lee Alexander couldn't be any more irrelevant. That's her own fault. She's actually a good writer.
Yeah.
But she decided to go down that path. Maybe she's relevant in another field, but she's certainly not relevant in this one. And I feel like I've always been a proud nerd. And I've always worn it on my sleeve. I don't think it's a conscious effort from me, because I just want to treat everyone with respect. But imagine a situation where you're trying to create a business or do a product and you're like, I fucking hate you motherfuckers. You all are fucking clowns and trash. Now, here's what we're going to talk about today on the show. Like, why would anyone want to listen to that?
Right.
I think there's like abrasive shit going on, and that's fun. And it's like very, like Howard Stern used to really be that way with his audience. And I love that kind of stuff where it gets a little agitated, a little flurry of punches and all that kind of stuff. Very, very irreverent. But we got to remember, it's the same reason why we cut bait with our old merch people. It's because their customer service was not adequate. And we are a customer-focused company, which is why we are successful. So I think, is it conscious from a production standpoint? No, it's conscious from a human standpoint. But who the fuck would run a production company in which you hate and poke at your audience? It doesn't make any sense. And I don't really know of any successful businesses that really thread that needle. Nor why would you want to? I guess some people listen to political stuff that they don't like, but that's about it. You know?
Yeah. For us, I can just say from the standpoint, it's like our adherence to the audience goes on so many levels, whether it's how we interact with them or what we offer them. I mean, it's like, it's no secret that we try to cram as much as we can into the $5 tier. And even then, you can pretty much get everything for $1, which I'm not trying to make this a marketing pitch for our Patreon, but it's this idea from the top down that it's like, we want to be able to provide as much value as we can. And even if you don't want the $1, you practically can get how many hours a week from us, which obviously we make money in other means from the free feed, whether it's from ads on YouTube or sponsorships or whatever. But yeah, we don't take that for granted at all. And we would never want to be like, oh, all right, you fucking idiots. You guys are stupid and gamers are dead. Now, like you said, now let's talk about Horizon. Just,
by the way, Horizon is racist and it takes Indian narratives and Indian styles and appropriates them. And by the way, don't you love video games? It's like, go fuck off. We'll take it from here.
We'll take it.
Landon Keith wrote in and said, hey, howdy, CDC. Firstly, thank you, Colin and Chris, for the years of laughter and entertainment, both as individuals and as a team. Not to inflate Dustin's ego too much or add fuel to his Joker moment, but he's been an incredible voice to have on board as well since he started. I know, I told you. I mean, I'm not dumb.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any games you routinely go back to and after a moment of post-nut clarity, you realize once again that you kind of hate the game? For me, it's Assassin's Creed. I go back to it every now and then because it sounds like fun on paper to me, but after playing it for even a small time frame, it's just lost its luster for me. Be well, my dudes. A couple of games come to mind for me with this. Fallout 4 was one of those games I tried like 4 times. And I wanted so badly to like it. In fact, it's fine. There's nothing really wrong with it. I just remember when it came out that September, October 2015, when we got it, kind of funny. I was into it. I played it for about 25 hours, but I was like, nah, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel good anymore. It doesn't feel right. It's not 2008 anymore when Fallout 3 came out. And then I went back to it a couple more times and I'm like, I'm not into it. But I try to keep an open mind with this because I do go back to games that I didn't like and it does work. Dark Souls was another example. I went back several times. I just couldn't do it. But Bloodborne, I went back to a third time and I finally got it and played it, right? Almost all the way through to the end. I didn't beat it. And recently, I've been really in the mood for a collectathon, like a 3D platformer. And I remembered that I think it came out in 2017 or 2018, but I bought and played briefly, but never got anywhere near beating A Hat in Time. And I downloaded it on my PS5 in my bedroom. We have 3 PS5s, like one in the loft, one in the living room, one in the bedroom. And I try to keep different games on them, like different flavors of games. So I played like Doki Doki Literature Club in bed the entire time. But I played Far Cry 6 in the living room. And so I was like, I need a new bedroom game. And I downloaded A Hat in Time. And that was, it kind of is like fitting into this motif where I'm like, yeah, this game's good. I'm glad I went back to it. But I don't know that it becomes a routine. Assassin's Creed is actually one of those franchises that I did the exact opposite with, where I was like, I understand and accept that this will never happen for me. And I just stopped playing them. So are there any games, to Landon's point, that speak to you in this way, Dustin?
It's not exactly how Landon lays it out, but a game for me that I've realized is not as good as I once thought is Final Fantasy 15. And that's a game that I've actually went and platinumed the game. So I finished it and then went back.
Was it a Hey Platinum?
By the end, it was.
I have the Assassin's Creed 2 Hey Platinum, so I totally get it. Yeah.
No, so it wasn't. I don't know. It's such a weird, conflicting feeling thinking back to Final Fantasy 15, in that I like the characters of that game. I like the story of the game a lot. In fact, I think it's a really dark and kind of sad Final Fantasy game, and I appreciate that aspect of it. But thinking back on it now, the combat and its empty open world and the car that you drive around, I'm like, there's just a lot of stuff about this game in hindsight that I don't like. And so at one point I would have been like, yeah, Final Fantasy 15's awesome. But now I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know about that game. But there's plenty of games that I've played, and looking back now, I'm like, I wouldn't enjoy it. Assassin's Creed's one of them that I really wanted to play Assassin's Creed 3 when it came out because I thought the fact that it took place in the American Revolution sounded so cool.
Oh,
so
yeah, that's the last one I gave a chance to. I wanted to love it.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's funny. I remember playing those and like blitzing through them and being like, this is pretty cool, but I'm really excited about this new one. And then that Assassin's Creed 3, I was like, this isn't very good either.
No, Assassin's Creed. It just turns out that Assassin's Creed is just not very good. At least those old games. I did buy a bunch of them in anticipation. What was the one that took place? Syndicate, the one that took place in Britain. That one I think looked really, really cool. But I think that was like the turning point where the games became good. Like apparently after that is when the games actually started to become like actually good games.
I like the one with old Ezio. Is that
Don't even ask me because I don't know.
I can't remember which. It's the third of the Ezio trilogy. I just like this idea.
Oh, Brotherhood or whatever. Is that what the one is?
Well, there's Brotherhood, and then is it Revelations? Something Assassin's Creed Revelation. I don't know. I like the old Ezio one. That one's cool.
Ezio. Yeah, Assassin's Creed 3. I was amped. I did a lot of coverage at IGN about the history of it, which was fun. I remember actually I did a video with Andrew Goldfarb when it was announced, and they just showed a picture of Washington, I think, or something like that, and it got like millions of views on YouTube just because it was like this first something that had said about it. Go on.
There's a really interesting DLC for that game that I've always been curious about.
George
where Washington as a king, and he gets the apple or whatever from the lore, and he has like alien powers or whatever. That sounded kind of neat.
Yeah, it did. I remember the art for that was really cool because it was like him and like a throne, and of course he refused to be king. Asher Masi has the final inquiry. Says, "Hey CDC, this question is mainly for Colin and Dustin. Isn't that great? Because Chris is gone.
Perfect.
With the increasing popularity of Japanese role-playing games in the West, I am very interested in jumping in to try these games out for myself. My only experience in the genre would be playing Kingdom Hearts, older Pokemon games on the Game Boy Advance, and some visual novels, though those aren't RPGs. No, they're not. The problem for me is that there are so many options to choose from, which causes me to feel intimidated and not make a selection. So I'm asking you, gentlemen, where should I start? Would it be Tales, Persona, Ys, Dragon Quest, Ni no Kuni, Disgaea, or something else? Any recommendations would be helpful. Thank you and keep up the great work." Now, I'll throw this over to you. You know just as much about this genre as I do, but I would say that right off the bat, Persona, no. Ys, no. Ni no Kuni, no. Disgaea, definitely not. For me, I would say Tales would be maybe the most reasonable choice that you made here, but the traditionalist in me says go play Dragon Quest because it's the very foundation of everything. And while you might not like it, if you do like it, you'll know that you are a big fan of traditional turn-based role-playing games, and that will open up a whole world to you. But if you know that you don't like that, then that will close that world to you, and then you can worry about active battle systems like in the Final Fantasy games, the later Final Fantasy games, action RPGs like Ys, and all the rest, even Tales to an extent. Ni no Kuni, I think, is a little too Pokemon-like. You already have an experience with Pokemon, so I would just say no from that perspective. I like Ni no Kuni a lot, but Disgaea is too complicated and also really overrated, in my opinion. I say no to Persona because it's too much. I think the game that comes to mind for me over and over again, it's like Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy VII. I would just start with one of those maybe. If you want to start with Dragon Quest, then start with something like Dragon Quest XI. Or if you want to play on DS, play Dragon Quest IX. That's a really good one too. But I don't know. You might have different answers here. What do you think?
So, I mean, the thing about, though, for me with Colin, Dragon Quest is that you say that Persona is too much, but you'll put just as many hours into Dragon Quest XI.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I should say, I mean too much as far as too much going on in the game. Dragon Quest is just really long, but it's very simple, and that's a detriment for some people, but it's not simple. It's just straightforward.
So I feel like Persona 5, honestly, I know this is probably the most obvious answer to the audience, but I think Persona 5 is a great starting point in that it doesn't feel weighed down in some other RPGs do. Like there's not like the action feels very flowing, and it feels like you're going to be making progress. And very rarely, I think, if you play the game if you pace yourself easily, you won't need to go and grind and do boring stuff. To a new RPG player, the thought of going and grinding might not be so hot. And I feel like, man, with Persona 5, the characters, the story is so good. It's constantly drip feeding you new mysteries that's going to compel you to keep playing. And so I really do feel like Persona 5 Royal could be a fantastic place to start. I also want to shout out Ni no Kuni 2, which I know, Colin, you and I have different feelings about this game, but I think that Ni no Kuni 2 was a really fantastic game, a game that I truly, really loved in a lot of ways. And it has a good, I guess the combat could be described as more of a Tales style. It's an action RPG. And that's one that I really enjoyed. You could pick up for super cheap now. I'm trying to think, though. Dragon Quest, the only reason I would say no to Dragon Quest as a first RPG, while it is the fundamentals, is that I think that game is so bloated and long that
why? Because it ends 3 times. Yeah,
dude. So I've never beat that game. I played probably 30 or 40 hours of it, but Holly played through this game, and I swear she was playing it for like 6 months of just, and then I was like, so is it almost over now? And she's like, well, not really, but I can understand why you think that.
Yeah,
like over and over again.
Yeah, it's that was a slog, but
yeah.
But just in terms of the tradition and in terms of the mechanics, I guess Persona, because it is very turn-based and somewhat traditional as well, wouldn't really be overwhelming. I just want to steer them away from the action RPGs, like East, definitely not. Tales, I would say no. I love Tales, but anyway.
It's interesting to me just because I almost consider action JRPGs and regular JRPGs like so different that they're similar categories, but they're very different to me. It's a whole different feel.
That's true. I mean, that's why we're saying with our role-playing game that we're making at Lilymo, which is a 16-bit style Final Fantasy style role-playing game, we're calling it a Japanese style RPG. Because we're not Japanese, but it is a JRPG. Right. It is a JRPG, like first and foremost, definitely. So it is interesting to kind of get into the genetics of that. All right, Dustin, let's get the hell out of here. It's time to go. Do you have any closing comments before we leave?
Just everybody enjoy the weekend. Obviously, if you're listening to the show, there's a good chance you're picking up Horizon Forbidden West. And so it'll just be nice that we'll all be experiencing this together. I know exciting. I'm going to try to do as little as possible. And just, who knows? You know what? Maybe it sounds like a good weekend to order a pizza or Chinese food or something. Stay inside. Enjoy some video games.
I totally agree. And yeah, I'm excited to get this game going. Excited to hang. Actually, it's tomorrow. It's funny. Tomorrow on Friday, I usually record Sacred Symbols Plus. And the person canceled on me. And I'm excited to do that episode. We don't really need it right now because we have so many episodes in the can. But he canceled. Then we'll do it later. But I was like, oh, damn. Because now I just get to wake up tomorrow and play Horizon, like right when I get out of bed, which is nice. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, we'll have the Sacred Symbols Plus episode of that in the coming weeks. We'll, of course, do Sacred Symbols Plus all about Elden Ring as well. I won't be on that one, but others will do that. And we'll continue to have those game-centric conversations. Dying Light 2 as well. Maybe we'll do something with Sifu, depending on the combination of people that played that in the company as well. So keep an eye out. I know you guys want more game conversations. We will try to get those integrated into Sacred Symbols Plus, which I think is really rolling with the interviews, but we'll break them up a little bit more. I want to do a mailbag. I want to do a call-in. There's a lot I want to do. We just don't have many. There's not much room in the roster. We already do too many shows, if anything. So
yeah.
All right. It's time to go. Dustin, I appreciate you. Chris, we miss you. We'll see you next week, of course, when he's back in New York. And we appreciate all of you out there for your love, kindness, and support. Patreon.com/LastStandMedia. We'll see you next time. Thank you again. Goodbye.
See ya.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.